Hey everyone, if you're enjoying my RM audiobooks, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that hype, and maybe check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel even more. Your support means a lot and helps me keep these coming. Now, sit back and enjoy the story. A Soup of a Man. Chapter 28, Road to Hell. Grace Mallory's estate, upstate New York, Adirondack Mountains, June 21st, 2022. Knock, knock, knock. Grace Mallory moved towards her front door, her right hand holding her pistol tight behind her back. She looked at the feed of her security cameras, which showed no one was at the door. She quickly put her phone away. Her security feed had clearly been tampered with, and whoever was at the door wasn't friendly. As she approached the door, she placed one hand on the handle and pressed herself against the wall. She could swing the door open and fire from her position. No point in standing in the middle of the hallway to get shot. She also eyed the watch on her wrist that Lois' husband Clark had given her. Although not his biggest fan, he was reliable, and she would press the emergency signal if she started to get over well. Click. Mallory froze as she felt the barrel of the gun pressed into her ribs. The pressure and angle told her it was a professional, as any attempt at sudden movement would result in at least one lung being punctured. She raised her hands up, careful to show that she wasn't trying to use her gun as she formulated how to subdue whoever this was. Drop it and open the door. Mallory froze as she turned her head and was greeted by the face of Lois Lane, who had a look of fury on her face that she had never seen before. Well, she had, just not on Lane's face. Lane, what are you doing? Mallory attempted to move, but found the gun pressed hard into her ribs, stopping her from saying anything more. No talking, just do it. Lois' tone would have been enough to make Mallory comply. She opened the door, her eyes narrowing as she saw Huey, Butcher, and the rest of the boys, along with Diana. Mallory quickly found herself forced into her living room. Butcher, and Kimiko cleared furniture, creating a space which was quickly filled by a chair Huey brought in from the dining room. She was seated and handcuffed to the chair by Lois, whom she wished she hadn't taught so well at this moment, as she found that getting out of the cuffs would be tricky. However, her focus quickly shifted to Diana, who placed a metal rope around her that she pulled tight, earning a grunt from Mallory. Ow! Mallory's sarcastic comment earned her a raised eyebrow from Lois. So what is this? Some sort of magic rope that will make me tell the truth? No. Lois pulled another chair to sit across from Mallory, the gun still in her hands as she crossed her legs, placing on her lap. That rope is made of a special material 100 times stronger than steel. Clark bought it to help train Ryan. If it's pulled tight enough, it will cut you in half, which Diana will do, if you lie at any moment. Trust me, I'll know. Diana accompanied her statement with a small yank of the rope, causing Mallory to grunt. I want to know about Nicaragua, BCL Red, and what killed Soldier Boy. Lois' words caused Mallory's focus to fix on her completely, and despite the situation she was in, Mallory just sighed. Some. Mallory just shook her head and seemed to manage to look like this was all one poor joke. I'm guessing he did the whole, I don't remember bit. Trust me, he remembers. He's just pointed you to me in the hopes that you'll be more pissed at me than him. Trust me. Untime me and we will get him to tell you without the RO. Bang. Everyone froze as Lois fired a shot that landed squarely between Mallory's legs. The shot was so close and so precise that it had torn part of Mallory's trousers, but hadn't drawn blood or even left a scratch. I don't fucking care. I don't care about my dad and you pinning blame on each other or your goddamn games. They took my kids. Lois exploded so violently as she stood up that her chair flew back, and she was brandishing her weapon with such fury that even Diana stepped back a little. So you're going to tell me everything right now? I want to know about BCL Red. I want to know how we kill these fuckers so that we can fucking end this. Lois turned around, about to shout again, when she saw it was Huey who had stepped forward. The concern in his eyes caused her to pause. Lois, maybe we should try Annie or wait for Clark. This is all. We could be going too far. We haven't heard from Clark in nearly 2 days. Annie and the League can't stop Homelander. Lois's tone was quiet and muted, but the cold, hard look in her eyes told Huey that any protest he was willing to give would just fall on deaf ears. This is the only way. Huey opened his mouth, but instead just moved away to the back of the room, crossing his arms as he glanced around at everyone, but made no further protest. Lois shared a look with Butcher, who just gave her a firm nod as she focused back on Mallory, the grip on her gun becoming tighter as she willed herself forward. She picked up her chair and sat back down, taking a deep breath as her calm demeanor returned to her. If you're having any further doubt about telling us, Butcher borrowed your ledger. Lois' words caused a frown to appear on everyone's face apart from Butcher, Lois, and Mallory. The latters fell into wide-eyed horror. The one in the safe behind bush number 1. He's got a lovely post ready to go. So, shall we cut the shit and you start telling me what I want to know? There was a moment of silence as everyone watched who was going to blink first. And just as Diana was about to pull the rope tighter, Mallory let out a sigh. The old spy just seemed to deflate a little as she looked away from Lois and out a nearby window, her mind going back to a different time. One that she clearly did not care for, if the bitter look she had and the apparent sour taste in her mouth were anything to go by. You'll wish you hadn't. It was part of Operation Charlie, Reagan's pet project, deep off the books. Mallory replied, her eyes fixed on Lois with a steel she hadn't seen before. Help the Contra rebels fight the Soviet-backed Sandinistas. Fucking clusterfuck. We were there for support. Me and Lane. And were you involved in the other side? Spoke up, causing Mallory to look at him. And for the first time, Huey saw regret in the spy's eyes. What other side? Huey asked, as just glared at Mallory, who shifted at the look but finally gave in and provided an answer. To fund their fight, the Contras smuggled coke into the U.S. The CIA looked the other way. Mallory's admitted her eyes darting away from as she did so. As long as we only sold it in minority neighborhoods. Orders from the top. Keep the Soviets out of Central America, whatever it takes. Jesus Christ, Huey whispered, his eyes widening. Yeah, well, that's not even the worst part. Mallory continued, her voice taking on a hollow quality. Payback was there. Soldier Boy, Crimson Countess, Gunpowder, the whole fucking team. They were supposed to be our ace in the hole, superhuman support for the Contras. Make it look like America's heroes were backing freedom fighters. That fucking prick Stan Edgar's idea. Stan Edgar, he was there? Lois pressed, leaning forward. What happened? Yeah, he was in the middle of all of it. And what happened was what always happens when you put a bunch of narcissistic, drug-addled supes in a war zone with no oversight. Mallory's face twisted into disgust. 2 weeks they were there, and they went off script from day fucking one. Soldier Boy, especially. The man was a walking disaster, drunk on power, actual alcohol, and whatever else he could get his hands on, which in camp that smuggled coke, as you imagine, was a ton of coke. He didn't give a shit about the mission. None of them did. Fucking Swado got himself killed stepping on one of our landmines. And my father? Lois asked, her voice tight. Sam was different then. Mallory's eyes softened slightly, a hint of something that might have been affection flickering across her face before hardening again. Still a true believer. Still thought we were the good guys. Or at least that following orders was the whole point of well existing. He tried to keep payback in line, try to make the mission work. But Soldier Boy, she trailed off, shaking her head. What did he do? M's voice was low, dangerous. Everything. Civilian casualties. Vaklimis. Rape. Mallory spat the words out like poison. The disgust on her face said it was likely much worse than her simple words could convey. And his team just looked the other way. Every single. It was a well-oiled machine of depravity. And Sam Lane covered it up as ordered, wiped out a couple of villages to keep the mission secret. And you did nothing? Diana's voice cut through the room like a blade. What could I do? Mallory shot back, anger flashing in her eyes. He was Soldier Boy, America's first superhero. Bot's golden boy. I reported it up the chain, and it got buried by Sam Lane, as ordered. Every single time. The mission was too important. The optics were too valuable. So I swallowed it and kept going. Until, Butcher prompted, his voice eerily calm. Until March 12, 1984. Mallory's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. We got intel that a Soviet Special Forces team was in the area. High-value targets. Sam's team, what was left of it after previous engagements, was tasked with providing support to payback for the intercept. She paused, her eyes distant, seeing something the rest of them couldn't. Sam's team at that point was down to 3 men. 3, including Sam himself. Mallory's voice cracked slightly, as her eyes went back in time as if conjuring the all-team. The best soldiers America had. Enhanced. Deadly. But just 3 against God knows what the Soviets have been waiting for. Although, the brass didn't care. For them, Sam and his boys not coming home was the best thing that could happen. Years of black ops shit finally, without any surviving loose ends. They were loose cannons, but they listened to Sam, and he listened to me. Why? Lois asked, curiosity getting the better of her a little. She always wondered what her father and Mallory's relationship was. Largely, it was respect. I had run an op with them previously, and Sam trusted me. Mallory then released a heavy sigh as she looked into Lois' eyes, the same ones her father had. We were also sleeping together, which I think helped. I was also pregnant. 3 months. Sam didn't know. I hadn't told him yet because I was married to someone else. It was complicated. Jesus, Lois whispered, her anger momentarily forgotten. The op went sideways from the start. Mallory continued, her words coming faster now, as if she needed to get them out before she lost her nerve. The Soviets were ready for us. They had intel. They knew we were coming. And it went to shit. They also apparently had something that even the playing field. BCL read, stated. That's what they called it. Mallory's face was pale now, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't see it. I was too busy trying to stop the friendly fire gunpowder was laying down on our men. Little shit fired at our ammo truck below the thing, fucking sky high, and knocked me out. Whatever BCL read was I didn't see it. Just that the Soviets apparently deployed some kind of weapon. The Countess said it was a gas. Aerosolized. Bright red, like blood in the air. The Soviets hit Soldier Boy with it the moment he engaged. And Butcher leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. According to the report, he went down. Mallory's voice was hollow. Although Butcher was eating up the idea, Lois saw that Mallory clearly didn't buy it fully. Just collapsed. Started convulsing. Screaming. The invincible bastard who'd walked through gunfire and explosions like they were nothing. And he was on the ground, choking on his own blood. The room went silent. Everyone apart from Lois, Butcher, and Mallory glancing at each other. Those three just held an unblinking stare between the three of them. Payback tried to get to him. Crimson Countess hit the Soviets with everything she had. Black Noir went after their operatives. However, the Soviets were prepared. They had firepower, and Payback had to fall back to save lives. The Countess' words, not mine. What about my father's team? Lois asked quietly. According to Sam, Mallory's jaw clenched. He and his two men went in to extract Soldier Boy, but the Soviets had them pinned down. And that's when the artillery fire started. The Soviets called it in, leveled fucking everything in the area. Payback fucked right off when that happened. So they abandoned him. Diana snorted, not surprised. She had heard of Payback's reputation, and this was on point. They had no choice, apparently. Mallory's voice was flat, but her eyes told a different story. At least that's what the after-action report said. The whole area became roasted beef jerky. Sam made it out, with one of his men. Not in the report was that Noir, bleeding from the head, jumped the injured men, tore one spine, and beat Sam nearly to death, screaming about how he deserved it. The only reason he lived was that Stan Edgar appeared and called the fucker off, thinking Sam was dead. He wasn't. He came over, found me, and dragged me back to camp. And Soldier Boy? Butcher asked, his eyes narrowing, not missing that Mallory had left out the last detail of the events. And Soldier Boy? Mallory trailed off for a second before Butcher gave her a very pointed look that forced her to finish her story. The Soviets took his body. That's what Sam told me later. That Soldier Boy was dead, and the Russians took his corpse for study. You never saw the body, Butcher said. It wasn't a question. No one did. The whole site was buried under rubble and fire. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Soviets were gone. All we found was blood. Lots of blood. Soldier Boy's blood. Mallory met his eyes. Sam said there was no way anyone could have survived what that gas did to him. Said he watched Soldier Boy die. And the gas. BCL read. Lois pressed, her eyes fixed on Mulroy. Gone. The Soviets took it with them. Mallory shook her head, but just sighing as Dana pulled the rope a little tighter to make her say more. Whatever it was, whatever made it work, we never found out. Sam's been trying to recreate it for decades. The formula. The compound. But without knowing what it was made of, how it worked. She shrugged helplessly. It's been a ghost chase. So there's no way to get it, said, his voice flat. I didn't say that. Mallory's eyes were hard. Sam came to me 6 months ago, said he had intel. Russian intelligence chatter from an old source of him, kicked up. That's convenient. Lois scoffed, not believing it was that simple, and likely her father had either had the intel for years or made a deal to get it. One she didn't want to know about, and he failed to mention that. Well, that's Sam for you. Never admit anything. Lead people to where you want them any way possible, just without fucking saying it. Mallory chuckled darkly. What kind of chatter? Butcher asked sharply, ignoring the conversation the two women were having. References to a weapons facility. Siberia. Old Soviet black site that supposedly still has Cold War-era projects archived. Mallory leaned forward as much as her restraints would allow, including chemical weapons used in Central America operations. You think BCL Red is there? Lois said. I think if it exists anywhere, it's there. Mallory nodded. Sam thought so too. He sent his own agent to go to investigate. And Huey asked, though he already knew the answer from the look on Mallory's face. And they disappeared 3 days later. Nobody. No evidence. Just gone. Mallory's voice was bitter. So yeah, maybe there's something to it. Maybe BCL Red is sitting in a Russian vault somewhere. Or maybe it's just a fairy tale, and Sam is sending people to die chasing shadows. We need to know, Lois said, her voice hard. We need that weapon. Then you'll have to go get it yourselves. Mallory met her eyes. Break into a Russian black site. Hope it's still there. Hope it still works after 40 years. And hope you can get out alive. Where? Butcher demanded. Sakha Republic. Northern Siberia. Middle of nowhere. The coordinates are in the file Sam sent to me 6 months ago. With a note to memorize and destroy. Mallory replied, back her voice humorous, but without a hint of finding any of this funny. You still have it? Asked. Of course I do. Always keep hard copies. It's how I've stayed alive. Mallory's smile was bitter. Insurance. In case someone came asking questions. And they need hard prof. You in case I needed leverage. She looked at Lois. Which apparently I do now. Lois stood, her decision made. Diana, let her go. Diana hesitated, then loosened the rope. Lois stepped forward and unlocked the handcuffs herself. You're going to give us everything, Lois said. It wasn't a question. The file. The coordinates. Whatever intel you have. Am I? Mallory rubbed her wrists, her eyes meeting Lois. Yes, because you want answers too. Lois' voice was quiet but firm. Because you've been carrying this for 40 years. Because you lost men in Nicaragua. Because deep down, you need to know if it was all for something or for nothing. Mallory held her gaze for a long moment. Then she stood, moving to her desk. She unlocked a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Everything I have. Coordinates. Satellite imagery. Facility layouts from the Cold War, probably outdated now. Guard rotations that are 40 years old. She handed it to Butcher. It's not much, but it's a start. Butcher took the file, flipping through it quickly. This'll do. One more thing. Mallory's voice stopped them as they turned to leave. Please don't do this. If BCL Red is real, if you find it. She looked at each of them in turn. It won't end a war, it will start one, with Vought with the Supes, and even if you kill them all, they'll burn the world down with them. Let them try, Butcher said coldly, before turning away and walking out the building. As they filed out, Lois lingered behind. She stood in front of Mallory, studying the older woman's face. This daughter of yours, my sister. Lois' voice was quiet. She knew Mallory had a daughter. She knew about the grandchildren. She just never knew this side to it. What is she like? Mallory's expression softened. Smart. Funny. Kind. Even after everything. She had her father's eyes. She paused. And his stubborn streak. She didn't know the truth about Sam. About me. About any of this. She just lived a normal life. Until someone took that from her. I'm sorry, Lois said. And meant it. She also guessed it's why her dad had killed Lamplighter so quickly. Revenge for the loss of his grandchildren. So am I. Mallory met her eyes. Be careful, Lois. This crusade you're on, it'll consume you if you let it. It consumed Sam. It consumed me. Don't let it consume you too. Lois didn't say anything, but instead just turned and walked away following Butcher. Somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, June 22nd, 2022. The private jet was quiet except for the hum of the engines. Butcher didn't know where Dana had got it from or their false papers to enter Russia. And in truth, he didn't care, as long as they worked. He was sat in one of the leather seats, the file Mallory had given him spread out on the table in front of him. Across from him, was cleaning his weapons with methodical precision. Frenchie and Kimiko were in the back, speaking in low tones. Huey was staring out the window, his face troubled. Butcher's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A message from Lois. Make me a promise. Follow this through. No matter what. Find BCL Red. Find out what really happened. Come back, so we can end this. Butcher stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back. I promise. He hit send and pocketed the phone. Then he pulled out a small vial from his jacket, the Temp V that Sam Lane had given him. He'd been using it sparingly, only when absolutely necessary. But he could feel it calling to him. The power, the strength, the ability to fight back against the monsters. He unscrewed the cap, staring at the green liquid inside. You sure about that? Huey's voice cut through his thoughts. Butcher looked up and saw Huey watching him, his expression unreadable. Huey had found out about the Temp V after Mallory's when he found the man puking his guts up and almost collapsing from the withdrawal. The two were seated at the back away from everyone else, in position so that no one could see or hear their conversation. We're going up against a Russian black site, mate. Butcher's voice was casual, but his eyes were hard. I'll take every advantage I can get. That shit's going to kill you, Huey stated flatly, although his eyes lingered a bit too long on the Temp V for Butcher's liking. We're all dying, Huey. Butcher smiled, but there was no humor in it. Question is whether we take the bastards with us. You really think we're going to find anything? Huey asked as Butcher pocketed the veil for later, speaking louder so the whole team could now hear. I mean, it's been 40 years. The Cold War's over. Maybe the Russians destroyed everything. Or maybe they kept it, Frenchie called from the front, shrugging as he made the comment. The Russians are not known for throwing away weapons, especially ones that work. If it worked, Huey countered. Mallory said she never saw what BCL Red actually did. Just heard stories. For all we know, it was propaganda. Disinformation. Soldier Boy died, said quietly, his hands going tight at the words as he stared out the window. Something killed America's first superhero. Something the Soviets had. That's not propaganda. We don't even know if he's really dead, Huey argued, trying to find any hole that could slow down this insane plan. No one ever saw a body. Because the Russians took it, Butcher said, his voice hard. The commies took the corpse for study. That's the story. That's what everyone believes. And you believe it? Huey asked. Butcher was quiet for a moment, staring at the files in front of him. Satellite images of frozen wasteland. Coordinates that led to the middle of nowhere. Don't matter what I believe. What matters is finding that weapon. If BCL Red can kill Soldier Boy, it can kill Homelander. That's all we need to know. Butcher. Kimiko's signing was sharp, demanding attention. Frenchie translated. She wants to know what we would do if the weapon wasn't there. If the facility is empty or destroyed. Then we improvise. Butcher replied without looking up once from the files. Like we always do. And if it's a trap? Asked, offering the only reasonable point Huey had heard so far. If someone knows we're coming, then we fight our way out. Butcher's smile was cold as he looked up the files. Like we always do. Ain't that right, boys? Kent Family Home, Los Angeles, California, June 23, 2022. Lois pulled into the driveway, her hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The interrogation of Mallory replayed in her mind. The gun, the threats, the desperate fury that had consumed her. She barely recognized herself anymore. But she'd gotten what she needed. Butcher had the intel. They had a lead on BCL Red. It was a start. She walked to the front door, fumbling with her keys. Her hands were steadier now, but exhaustion was setting in. She hadn't slept properly in days. Hadn't eaten. Hadn't. The door opened before she could unlock it. Clark stood in the doorway, and Lois felt her breath catch. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard. His suit was wrinkled, as if he'd been wearing it for days. But in his arms, sleeping peacefully against his chest, was Mia. Clark, Lois breathed, her eyes immediately going to their daughter. She's okay, Clark said quietly. She's safe. Lois reached out, her hands trembling as she touched Mia's soft hair. The baby stirred, but didn't wake. When did you, how? A few hours ago. Stan Edgar, a what? Lois closed the door behind her, her mind racing as she just looked at Clark. He just gave her back. Yes, he is, and yes, he just gave her back. Clark's voice was hollow. He moved to the living room, still holding Mia close, as if letting go of her would cause her to vanish. Lois, we need to talk. Something in his tone made Lois' stomach clench. She followed him into the living room, watching as he gently laid Mia in her portable bassinet. The baby sighed in her sleep, but remained peaceful, unaware of the storm surrounding her. What happened? Lois asked, her voice trembling. Where is Ryan? Clark sat heavily on the couch, his head in his hands. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. He gave her a brief overview of the events that had happened. Stan Edgar's revealing himself, Homelander's arrival, and the images of Krypton that he had been shown, without answering her, before releasing a sigh. Stan Ed, Zod made me an offer. Ryan as well. A choice. Ryan took it. Says he doesn't believe in people anymore, not since his mom. Clark's voice cracked as he stared at his daughter asleep, soundly next to them, getting to Lois's question. Zod said humanity has proven itself unworthy, that they aren't worth saving, and we should just leave. That I being here was a mistake, that we were meant to stay for a couple of days at most, then leave. Clark, he wants to build a new Krypton, far away on a distant world. Clark's words came faster now, as if he needed to get them out before he lost his nerve. He said humans are nothing in the grand scheme of things. That Kryptonians are needed. The Kryptonians need to lead, to guide, to save the whole universe. So what? He just wants to leave, Lois said, her voice sharp. And what about the Supes? About all the mess Vought created he created? He says it was all humanity doing. He never made them make soups, or make them into celebrities, or any of it. That's when we leave humanity, we'll have to clean up its own mess. Clark looked at her, and the doubt in his eyes terrified her. He says humanity was destroying before us, and nothing can be done. Wars, climate change, corruption. It's in humanity's nature to destroy itself. Clark, you know that's not true. Lois moved closer, kneeling in front of him. You know that people are better than that. You've always known that. Have I? Or have I been fooling myself? Clark's voice was barely a whisper, his eyes lingering on their daughter. Lois, humanity was given incredible powers, powers that could change the world to create superheroes. Yes, Frederick Vought was a monster, but he's been dead for decades, and thousands have worked for Vought. What did anyone do with it after him? They made movies, milkshake bars, TV ads, whilst the world burned around them. Clark, Lois felt cold as Clark slumped in his seat, his hand going to his forehead, and for the first time ever, he just looked tired. I had Kellex run scenarios, about what would happen if I fought Homelander, about how I could help solve the issues facing us, about preventing a Supe takeover or something like it. And you know what the results were? Clark tensed as his eyes drifted to his wife, who had placed her hands on his knees, getting him to look at her. Even in the best-case scenario, millions died, widespread fear, and I would have to seize control, force the solutions on people. I always rejected that because I believe that people are good, that they want to be better. So what are you saying? You're going to what? Conquer Earth to save it. Lois felt her heart break as she looked at Clark, who for the first time ever was showing a level of doubt she didn't think he was capable of. I'm not going to conquer anyone. All I ever wanted was to help. But even as Clark said the words, they sounded hollow, as if the part of him that believed that was flickering out like a candle in the wind. Zod offered me a place, a role. He said I could help guide our people back to greatness. Away from Earth, away from humanity, have a world I dream of, peace, justice, and truth for all. And you believe him? Roi demanded. I don't know what to believe anymore. Clark's powers flared for just a moment, heat vision flickering in his eyes before he forced it down. I don't know who the monsters are anymore, Lois. Is it Homelander? Or is it the humans who created him? Is it Zod? Or is it humanity that creates a world that just doesn't care anymore? Is it me? For thinking that maybe Zod has a point? That the world isn't worth saving? It's not you, Lois said firmly, grabbing his face, forcing him to look at her. Clark Kent, you're not a monster. You're the best man I know. Human, Kryptonian, or otherwise. Then why does it feel like I'm losing? His voice broke completely, and suddenly, he wasn't Superman anymore. He was just a man who'd lost his mother, who'd lost the boy who had become his son, who was watching everything he believed in crumble around him. Why does it feel like no matter what I do, no matter how many people I save, the choices I make, it's never enough? Because you're trying to save everyone, Lois said softly, her hand going to his. And you can't. No one can. Zod can. Clark pulled away from her a little, his eyes staring off into the distance. That's what he says. That with Kryptonian guidance, with our power, we could end war, end famine, end suffering, all of it. Just not here, Lois said, her anger flaring up a little as she looked at her husband. He says that unless I am willing to do what was necessary, there was no point. Humanity is not worth saving. And what do you think is necessary? Lois's voice was quiet, dangerous. She stood up, putting distance between them. What does Zod want you to do, Clark? You want me to join him, to help rebuild Krypton somewhere else. Clark's eyes finally met hers. He says the survivors in the Phantom Zone, my mother, Kara's parents, hundreds of others, they're waiting. We could save them, build something better. And Earth? Lois asked, though she already knew the answer. Earth? Clark trailed off, looking at Mia, sleeping peacefully. Zod says it will sort itself out. Or it won't. Either way, it's not our responsibility. Not your responsibility. Lois repeated the words slowly, as if testing their weight. Clark, do you hear yourself? Since when is helping people only your responsibility when it's convenient? It's not about convenience. Clark stood abruptly, his frustration boiling over. It's about effectiveness, Lois. I've been here for decades. I've saved thousands of people. And what's changed? What still runs everything? Supes are still out of control. The world is still burning. Maybe Zod is right. Maybe I'm just putting band-aids on a hemorrhage. So you run away. Lois's voice was flat. You take Ryan, take Mia, and you run away to play God on some other planet. I haven't decided anything, Clark said, but the words sounded weak even to his own ears. Haven't you? Lois moved to the bassinet, looking down at their daughter. Clark, I need you to listen to me. Really listen. Not with your super hearing or your x-ray vision or any of that. Just listen with your heart. She turned to face him, and there were tears in her eyes. Do you remember what you told me when we first met? When I asked you why you did this? Why you put on the suit and save people? She didn't wait for him to answer. You said it was because you could, because you had the power to help, and that meant you had the responsibility to try. Not to succeed, not to fix everything, just to try. Maybe I was naive, Clark whispered. Maybe you were human, Lois shot back. The best parts of you, Clark, have always been the parts that Martha and Jonathan gave you. The parts that choose to help even when it's hard, even when it fails, even when it hurts. She moved closer to him, her voice softening. You want to know why it feels like you're losing? Because you're measuring success by an impossible standard. You can't save everyone. You can't fix everything. But that doesn't mean you should save no one and fix nothing. Zod, show me Krypton, Clark said quietly. Show me what we lost. A civilization that could have changed the universe. And it's gone because people, beings far more advanced than humans, couldn't see the danger in front of them until it was too late. And you think Earth is the same, Lois said. It wasn't a question. I think maybe some things can't be saved. The admission seemed to cost him everything. Maybe some worlds are meant to fall. No, Lois's voice was steel. No, Clark, I won't let you do this. I won't let you give up on us. I'm not giving up. Yes, you are. Roi exploded. You're looking for permission to walk away. You want Zod to be right so you don't have to feel guilty about abandoning the world that raised you. The words hung in the air between them. Clark stared at her, and for a moment, something like anger flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by bone-deep weariness. What do you want me to do, Lois? His voice was barely audible. Tell me, because I don't know anymore. Lois took a shaking breath. She looked at Mia, then back at Clark. When she spoke, her voice was steady. I want you to remember who you are. Not Kal-El or Krypton. Not Superman. Clark Kent. The boy who grew up in Smallville. Who learned right from wrong from two farmers who loved him. Who chose to use his gifts to help people. Even when it was thankless. Even when it hurt. She stepped closer, taking his hands. I want you to look at her daughter and remember that she's both Kryptonian and human. That she deserves a world worth growing up in. And I want you to trust that humanity, messy, flawed, broken humanity, is still worth fighting for. And if I can't, Clark's voice cracked. What if I can't believe that anymore? Lois was quiet for a long moment. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man she'd fallen in love with drowning in doubt and grief. The weight of two worlds crushing him. And she made a decision. Then you need to take some time, Lois said finally, her voice carefully controlled. Go to the fortress. Meditate. Do whatever it is you do when you need to think. But Clark. She moved to him, placing both hands on his chest, right over the symbol he wasn't wearing. Don't make any decisions about Zod's offer until you've given yourself time to heal. Your mother and father have died. You lost Ryan. That's not the state of mind to make a choice that affects the entire world. Clark looked down at her hands, then met her eyes. And what will you do? Me? Lois forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'll be here. With Mia. Keeping things together. Like I always do. What? I mean it, Clark. Her voice was firm. Take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Neither is she. She glanced at Mia. We'll be here when you figure out who you are and what you believe in. Clark pulled her into an embrace, holding her tight. I love you, he whispered. I love you both so much. I know, Lois said into his chest. She closed her eyes, memorizing the feel of him, the warmth of him. I love you too. They stood like that for several minutes, neither wanting to let go. Finally, Clark pulled back. He looked at her, searching her face for something. You'll call me if anything happens? He asked, as he looked in her eyes, trying to see the hope Lois was telling him whilst there. If you need me? Of course, Lois lied. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. Clark nodded slowly. He moved to the bassinet, leaning down to kiss Mia's forehead. The baby stirred, making a small sound, but didn't wake. I'll go to the fortress, he said quietly, turned to look at Lois. Just for a few days, to clear my head. Take as long as you need, Lois replied, even as her heart screamed at her to tell him everything. To tell him about Butcher heading to Russia, about BCL Red, about the choice she'd already made. But she didn't, because if she told him, he would stop them. And if he stopped them, Homelander would still be out there, a loaded gun pointed at the world, at their daughter. And Clark, doubt-ridden, grief-stricken Clark, might not be strong enough to pull the trigger when the time came. Or worse, Zod might convince him not to and to just leave the Earth. So Lois kept her silence. She watched as Clark moved to the door, pausing on the threshold. What? Yes. Thank you, he said, for not giving up on me, even when I'm giving up on myself. The words were a knife in her chest. Never, she managed. I'll never give up on you, Clark. He gave her a sad smile, then was gone, a blur of motion and the whisper of displaced air. Lois stood in the empty doorway, staring at the space where he'd been. She counted to 30. Then she pulled out her phone and typed a message to Butcher. He's clear. He's gone to the fortress. You have a window. Find BCL Red. In this. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, before the guilt could eat her alive. She looked at Mia, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the terrible choices her parents were making in the name of protecting her. I'm sorry, Lois whispered to her daughter, to Clark, to herself. I'm so sorry, but this is the only way. She stood there for a long moment, phone in hand, staring at the screen. Then she scrolled through her contacts and stopped at a name she'd sworn she wouldn't call. Not after everything, not after learning the truth, but desperate times. She hit dial. It rang 3 times before he picked up. What? Her father's voice was neutral, unsurprised, as if he'd been expecting this call. I take it your husband is occupied. How did you? She stopped herself. Of course, he knew. Sam Lane always knew. I need your word that Butcher will come back alive. That they all will. I can't promise that. His voice was matter of fact. They're walking into a Russian black site in the middle of Siberia. Variables I can't control. Then control the ones you can, Lois said sharply. You sent them there. You orchestrated this. So you make sure they come back. There was a pause. And if they do, if they find BCL Red, what then, Lois? You prepared for what comes next. Sam Lane's voice was flat and emotionless as ever. She could hear the gears in his head turning. What do you mean? I mean, her father's voice dropped lower. That even if Homelander falls, there are still hundreds of Supes out there. Thousands, potentially, if Vought keeps producing V. You think one weapon is going to be enough? Lois felt cold. What are you saying? I'm saying I've been preparing for this scenario for a very long time. Multiple contingencies. Projects that go beyond just stopping Homelander. He paused. One in particular. Been in development for years. Shetty's running point on it. Shetty. Lois, search her memory. The dean of Godalkin University. What does she have to do with? Let's just say that if worst comes to worst, if your husband can't do what is necessary, if the Supes decide to take control. Her father's voice was eerily calm. We'll have options. Final options. Lois's blood ran cold. Dad, what did you do? What I always do. What's necessary? Sam Lane paused. That in itself caused Lois' heart to stop her dad never force. You should get some rest, Lois. It's been a long day. We'll talk more when there's something concrete to discuss. Dad. Oh, and Lois? The Martha Kent Foundation. You might want to review the financials. See where the money's actually going. The line went dead. Lois stared at her phone, her father's words echoing in her head. Final options. She looked at Mia, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, then at the space where Clark had been. What had she set in motion? What had her father been planning all along? And why did she have the terrible feeling that saving the world was going to cost more than she'd ever imagined? She moved to the window, looking out at the Los Angeles night. Somewhere out there, Butcher was flying toward Russia in a weapon that could kill gods. Somewhere above, Clark was wrestling with whether humanity deserved saving. And somewhere in the shadows, her father was playing a game she was only now beginning to understand. Lois closed her eyes and whispered into the darkness. God help us all. Vought Tower, New York, June 23, 2022. Homelander stood at the window of his penthouse, staring out at the city below. His city, his world. Except it wasn't. Not anymore. He thought he was a god. Thought he was the pinnacle of evolution. The perfect being. But he wasn't. He was a copy. A cheap knockoff. A human playing dress-up in powers that weren't even originally his. That's what Zod had called him. What Kara had agreed with, even if she tried to hide it behind false sympathy. He wasn't Kryptonian. Not really. He was human. Just a human who'd been injected with someone else's stolen greatness. And that knowledge burned. Homelander had spent his entire life being told he was special, that he was unique, that there was no one like him in the entire world. But it was all a lie. He wasn't unique. He was a knockoff, a forgery, a photocopy of something greater that came before. The real Kryptonians, Zod, Kara, Clark, even that brat Ryan, they were born with their powers. It was in their blood, in their very DNA. They were genuinely superior beings. But him, he was just a lab experiment, an embryo pumped full of stolen Kryptonian genes and raised in isolation until he didn't remember how to be human anymore. And the worst part? They pitted him. Zod had looked at him with contempt, yes, but also with pity. Like Homelander was a stray dog that had learned a few tricks. Impressive for a dog, perhaps, but still just a dog. Kara had been worse. She tried to be kind, tried to act like they were the same. But he'd seen it in her eyes, that same pity, that same awareness that she was real and he was just a copy. Even Clark, pathetic, weak, I love humanity Clark. Even he had something Homelander didn't. He'd been born on Krypton. He'd known his parents. He had a heritage, a culture, a legacy. What did Homelander have? A laboratory, a fake name, a corporation that built him to make money. He was a product, property, an imitation. Homelander's fist clenched and the glass in his hand shattered. He didn't notice the blood on his palm. Didn't care. He thought about Madeline, about how she'd lied to him, told him he was special when she knew the truth, knew he was nothing but Vought's experiment. He thought about Vought itself, about Stan Edgar and all the others who'd known what he really was and never told him. They'd built a god to make money, but they'd done it wrong. Used stolen material, cut corners, made him powerful, yes, but flawed, incomplete, less than. His comm device buzzed. He ignored it. Probably Ashley with some nonsense about his approval ratings or sponsorship deals. Like any of that mattered anymore. The truth was out now. The real Kryptonians were here. And compared to them, he was nothing. Just a lab rat with delusions of grandeur. He moved away from the window, his eyes catching on his reflection in the glass. The suit, the cape, the carefully styled hair. All of it an act. A performance designed to make humans feel safe around their manufactured god. But what was the point now? The humans knew the truth. They'd seen a real Kryptonian. Seen what he could be if he were actually one of them instead of just a cheap imitation. They had Clark Kent, Superman, the perfect hero. And now they had Kara, Power Girl. Another genuine article. Beautiful, powerful, and actually Kryptonian. What did they need him for? The comm buzzed again. This time he grabbed it and hurled it at the wall, where it shattered into pieces. The sound was satisfying, destructive, real. He wanted to destroy something, wanted to burn it all down, show them that even if he was a copy, he was still dangerous, still powerful, still. The elevator dinged. Homelander spun around, eyes already glowing red. If someone dared to interrupt him right now. The doors opened, and Ashley Barrett stepped out, tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with barely contained terror. She saw him standing there, blood dripping from his palm. The body of the assistant she had sent earlier to deliver him his talking points was in pieces on the floor, next to Homelander's shattered comm device, scattered across the floor, and she froze. I'm sorry, she stammered, already backing toward the elevator. I didn't mean to. The comm wasn't working and I thought, I'll just... Stop. Homelander's voice was quiet, controlled. Ashley froze mid-step, one hand reaching back toward the elevator button. She was shaking, literally trembling with fear. And something in Homelander's chest loosened. He took a step toward her. She flinched. Her breathing became rapid, shallow. The tablet in her hands was shaking so badly he could hear it rattling. You're afraid of me, he said. It wasn't a question. And no, Ashley tried to smile, that fake corporate smile she always wore. But it crumbled almost immediately. Please, You should be. Homelander took another step. Ashley pressed herself against the elevator wall. Do you know what I could do to you? What I've done to others? Homelander, please. Her voice cracked. He stopped, just a few feet away from her. Close enough that she had to crane her neck to look up at him. Close enough that he could hear her heart hammering in her chest. See the sweat beating on her forehead. Smell the fear radiating off her in waves. And it felt good. Not like with Zod. Not like with Kara. Not like with Clark. They'd looked at him with pity, with disappointment, with that knowing awareness that he was less than them. But Ashley looked at him like he was a god. A terrible, wrathful god, but a god nonetheless. What did you need? He asked, his voice almost gentle now. Ashley swallowed hard. Her hands were still shaking, but she managed to look at her tablet. Your approval ratings. They're down another 5 points. The board wants to discuss. I don't care about the board. Homelander moved closer until he was directly in front of her, until she had nowhere to look but up at him. Do you know what I learned today, Ashley? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. I learned that I'm not special, that everything I am was stolen from someone else, that I'm just a human pretending to be something more. His eyes bored into hers. Do you think I'm human, Ashley? I don't, she was crying now. Tears were streaming down her face. Please, I don't know what you want me to say. Say what you really think. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Tell me the truth. Am I human? Or am I a god? Ashley's mouth opened and closed several times. Her entire body was shaking now. She looked like she might pass out. She gasped out. You're Homelander. You're the greatest hero in the world. I'm a god. He finished for her. Say it. You're a god, Ashley whispered. You're a god. Homelander smiled. It was not a kind smile. Yes, he said. Yes, I am. And do you know what gods do to the things that displease them? Ashley's legs gave out. She slid down the elevator wall, clutching her tablet like it might protect her. Please, she sobbed. Please don't. Homelander stared down at her for a long moment. This pathetic, terrified human. This insect. This nothing. But she feared him. Truly feared him. Not with pity. Not with contempt. With pure, primal terror. And that was something. Get out, he said finally. Ashley didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled to her feet, hit the elevator button with shaking hands, and practically fell through the doors when they opened. The last thing Homelander saw was her tear-stained face, eyes wide with terror, as the doors closed. He stood there alone again. But this time, something had changed. Maybe Zod was right. Maybe he wasn't Kryptonian. Maybe he was just human with stolen powers. A failed experiment. A copycat. But he was still the most powerful human on the planet. He was still dangerous. Still feared. And if he couldn't be a real god, he could at least make sure everyone treated him like one. He moved back to the window, looking out at the city. His city. Not because he'd earned it. Not because he deserved it. But because he was strong enough to take it. Strong enough to hold it. Strong enough to burn it down if anyone tried to take it from him. Kara could have her Kryptonian heritage. Clark could have his perfect morality. Zod could have his grand mission. Ryan could have whatever future they built for him. But this world, these people, they were his. And he'd make damn... A smile slowly spread across Homelander's face. Not the practiced, camera-ready smile he showed the public. Something darker. Something honest. He might be a fake Kryptonian, but he was a real monster. And a god. And they didn't need anyone's approval to exist. They just needed people to fear them. And fear he had in abundance. Vought Tower, Stan Edgar's office. June 24th, 2022. The office was dark, lit only by the glow of the New York skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Kara stood at attention, her hands clasped behind her back in the military posture that had been drilled into her since childhood. Across from her, Zod, still wearing Stan Edgar's face, sat at his desk, reviewing something on a holographic display only he could see. Connell has agreed to continue his training, Zod said without looking up. He's responding well to the Kryptonian education protocols. Another month, and he'll be fluent in our language. 6 months, and he'll understand our culture as if he'd been raised on Krypton itself. That's good, Kara said, though something in her voice was uncertain. Zod finally looked up, his dark eyes sharp. You don't sound convinced. No, sir, I am. It's just. Kara shifted slightly. He's so young, and he's lost so much. His mother, his home, everything he knew. I worry we're moving too fast. He's adapting because he wants to adapt, Zod replied, his voice firm. The boy sees what humanity is, what it does to those who are different. He understands that this world has nothing to offer him but fear and hatred. Better he learns our ways now, while he's still malleable. Kara nodded, but the uncertainty didn't leave her eyes. And Kal-El is wrestling with his doubts. As expected, Zod leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at his lips. He'll come around. It may take time, but he will. You seem very certain of that. Because I am. Zod stood, moving to the window. He looked out at the city with an expression that might have been contempt or pity, or both. Kolelish idealistic. He believes in humanity because he was raised by two kind humans who sheltered him from the worst of their species. But that shelter is crumbling. His mother is dead. The boy he tried to save has chosen us over him. And soon, his smile widened slightly. Soon, the people he trusts most will disappoint him in ways he never imagined possible. Karafronit. What do you mean? Nothing you need concern yourself with. Zod turned back to her. The point is, Kal-El will join us. Whether it takes a year, a decade, or another century. I have time. I've waited this long. I can wait longer. Another century? Kara's eyes widened. Sir, you can't mean. Why not? Zod's voice was calm, reasonable. We're effectively immortal, Kara. This yellow sun sustains us indefinitely. What's 100 years to beings like us? A blink. Nothing. He moved closer to her. Humans age. Humansti. Humans disappoint. All we need to do is wait. And eventually, everyone Kal-El loves will either betray him or leave him. And when that happens, when he has nothing left to anchor him to this world, he'll understand what I've known all along. Which is that we don't belong here. That we never did. Zod placed a hand on her shoulder. You've seen it yourself. The mission took you across the galaxy. You saw the chaos that Krypton's destruction created. Wars. Genocides. Entire civilizations collapsing without our guidance. The universe needs us, Kara. Not just to rebuild our own civilization, but to be what we always were, the peacekeepers. The protectors. The righteous force that maintains order. Kara was quiet for a moment. Then what about him? Zod's hand dropped from her shoulder. Him. Homelander. Kara's voice was soft. John. Whatever he calls himself. He's my son, isn't he? Genetically speaking. My descendant. He is an abomination. Zod's voice was flat, hard. A human experiment that happened to succeed beyond its creator's intentions. Nothing more. But Uncle, he exists because of Vogelbaum's hubris. Because of Stormfront's obsession. Because humans couldn't help but steal what wasn't theirs and pervert it into something monstrous. Zod turned away from her. He is not your responsibility, Kara. He is not your son. He is a mistake that should have been corrected decades ago. But I feel. Kara struggled for the words. When I look at him, I feel the connection. The same one I feel with Kal-El. With Con-El. It's faint, but it's there. He's family. Isn't he? No. Zod's voice was final. Family is earned through honor, through shared values, through the bonds of our culture and our people. That thing shares none of that. He has some of your genetic material, yes. But so does every sample Vought took from you over the decades. Would you claim every vial of blood they drew as your child? That's not the same. It's exactly the same. Zod turned back to her, his expression stern. Kara, I understand this is difficult. I understand you have a compassionate heart. It's one of your greatest strengths. But it's also a weakness that humans will exploit if you let them. He moved closer. Homelander is damaged beyond repair. He was raised in isolation, taught that his power made him superior, given no moral framework, no culture, no guidance. He's a sociopath with godlike abilities. The kindest thing we could do would be to end him before he causes more damage. You can't mean. I don't intend to kill him, Zod said quickly. Not unless he becomes a threat. But I will not waste resources trying to rehabilitate him, either. He's humanity's problem. Let them deal with their own mistakes. Kara looked down at her hands. It just seems wrong to abandon him. He didn't ask to be created this way. None of us asked for the circumstances of our birth. Zod's voice softened slightly. But we all must live with the consequences. Homelander was created by humans, for human purposes. He is, in every way that matters, one of them. Let him find his place among his own kind. And if he can't, if he destroys himself, or them, then that's humanity's problem to solve. Zod returned to his desk. We have more important concerns. The ship's construction is nearly complete. The zone projector is functional. All that remains is gathering the resources we need for the journey and convincing Kal-El to join us. You said you were planting breadcrumbs? Kara's eyes narrowed slightly. What does that mean? Zod smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It means I've ensured that the people closest to Kal-El will make choices that will shatter his faith in humanity. Not through any direct action of mine, you understand. I'm simply allowing human nature to take its course. What have you done? Kara's voice took on an edge. Sir, what have you done? Nothing illegal. Nothing immoral by human standards. Zod pulled up a file on his desk. I've simply provided certain individuals with resources they requested, funding for projects they believed were necessary, information they needed to pursue their goals. I haven't forced anyone to do anything they didn't already want to do. What kind of projects? The kind that desperate people undertake when they feel powerless against beings like us. Zod closed the file. Tell me, Kara, what do you think happens when humans who hate and fear Supes are given the means to fight back? When people who love Kal-El decide they need insurance against him, just in case. Kara's eyes widened. No, you didn't. I did nothing, Zod said calmly. Sam Lane came to me years ago, desperate for a way to defend humanity against superpowered threats. I provided funding through shell companies, resources through black market channels, nothing that couldn't be traced back to legitimate, if morally questionable, sources. And Dr. Shetty? She's been working on her virus for years, convinced that Supes are an existential threat to baseline humanity. I simply ensured she had the funding to continue her research. A virus. Kara felt sick. You're helping them create a weapon to kill Supes? I'm allowing humans to be themselves, Zod corrected. Fear, paranoia, tribalism. These are their defining characteristics. Given power, they abuse it. Given knowledge, they weaponize it. Given time, they always disappoint. He looked at her with something almost like sympathy. And when Kal-El discovers that the people he trusted most, his father-in-law, his allies, the very foundation his aunt created in honor of his adopted mother, have been working on ways to neutralize him, to kill him if necessary, when he learns that humanity's survival instinct outweighs any love they claim to have for him. He'll lose faith, Kara whispered. He'll see the truth. Zod stood. That humans cannot help but fear what they cannot control. That they will always seek to destroy what they cannot dominate. That their love is conditional, transactional, and ultimately worthless. You're manipulating him. I'm teaching him, Zod said firmly. The same lesson I learned over a century ago. That this world is not our home. That these people are not our family. That our duty is to our own kind, not to a species that would turn on us the moment we stop being useful. Kara stood silent for a long moment. Then, and if you're wrong, if Kal-El chooses them anyway, then he'll die here, alone, betrayed by the very people he sacrificed everything to protect. Zod's voice was cold, and perhaps, in his final moments, he'll realize I was right all along. That's cruel. That's reality. Zod moved to the window again. I've lived among humans for 118 years, Kara. I've seen them at their best and their worst. I've watched them build wonders and commit atrocities. I've given them every opportunity to prove me wrong about their nature. And they never do. He looked back at her. Oh, there are exceptions. Individuals who rise above their baser instincts. But as a species, they're predictable, violent, self-destructive. And no matter how many of them Kal-El saves, eventually they'll turn on him. Because that's what humans do to anyone who makes them feel inferior. Kara wanted to argue, wanted to defend humanity, to insist that Kal-El's faith in them meant something. But she'd seen the galaxy, seen what happened when civilizations lost their way, seen the wars, the genocides, the chaos. And she'd seen how humans treated those who were different, how they treated the man they called Homelander, how they treat her if they ever saw her as a threat instead of a symbol. How long? She asked quietly. How long until the ship is ready? 6 months. Perhaps less if we push the timeline. Zod turned back to face her. And Kal-El has all that time to make his choice. I'm not rushing him. I'm not forcing him. I'm simply letting him see the truth. And Homeland is no longer our concern. Zod's voice was final. Focus on Con-El. Focus on the mission. Everything else is just noise. Kara no dit slowly. But as she left the office, she couldn't shake the image of Homelander's face. That desperate, broken look when Zod had called him an abomination. That need for connection, for family, for someone to tell him he mattered. She'd seen that look before. On the faces of young recruits who'd been told they weren't good enough. Criminals who'd been written off by society. People who'd been broken by the world and had nothing left but anger and pain. Zod was right about many things. But on this, maybe, just maybe, he was wrong. But what could she do about it? She was a soldier. Soldiers followed orders, even when those orders left someone behind. Chapter 29, From Russia with Love. Sakha Republic, Northern Siberia, Russia, June 24th, 2022. The cold was biblical. That was the only way Huey could describe it as he stepped out of the truck they'd stolen 40 miles back. The wind cut through his thermal gear like it was tissue paper, and he could feel his lungs protesting with each breath of the frigid air. The landscape was endless white in every direction, broken only by the dark smudge of the mountain ahead where their target was buried. Jesus Christ, he muttered, his teeth already chattering. Beautiful, no? Frenchie said without any warmth in his voice. He was checking his equipment one more time, his breath coming out in white plumes that crystallized almost instantly. Land of ice, terrible decisions, and worse vodka. Should have stayed in New York, Emem said, scanning the horizon through high-powered binoculars. His massive frame was bundled in layers that made him look like a bear. Facilities about 2 clicks north. Built into the mountainside like Mallory said. But it's not abandoned. Shit, Butcher spat. He looked terrible, pale, sweating despite the cold. With a tremor in his hands he couldn't quite hide. Huey had noticed him getting progressively worse over the past few days, but the man refused to acknowledge it. How many? Can't tell from here. But there's heat signatures. Active patrols. This place is operational. Diana stood apart from them, arms crossed, her enhanced eyes fixed on the distant facility. Unlike the rest of them, she wore only her regular gear with a heavy coat. The cold seemed not to bother her at all. At least a dozen guards that I can see, she said. Probably more inside. Modern weapons. Military discipline. This isn't some skeleton crew watching a museum piece. This is an active installation. Fantastic, Huey said. Anyone want to reconsider breaking into an active Russian military black site? Bit late for cold feet, Petit Huey, Frenchie said, though his smile was strained. We are here. We finished this, we. Kimiko was already moving, checking her weapons. She'd been silent the entire journey. Well, more silent than usual. There was something in her eyes that Huey recognized. Determination. But also fear. This place, or one like it, had been where Vought had done terrible things to her, where they'd turned her into a weapon. Right? Butcher said, shouldering his pack. You're Overwatch. Diana, you're on point. The rest of us move quiet, get what we came for, and fuck off before the Russians even know we were here. And if we can't stay quiet? Asked. Then we get loud, Butcher replied. But let's try to avoid World War III, yeah? They began the approach, moving slowly across the frozen wasteland. The wind was their ally, covering any sound they made, but it was also brutal. Huey lost his footing more than once on hidden ice, each time caught by either Frenchie or Diana before he could fall. It took nearly an hour to reach the facility's perimeter. The guard were professionals, rotating patrols, overlapping fields of fire, no obvious blind spots. Getting inside wasn't going to be easy. There, Diana whispered, pointing to a service entrance on the eastern side. 2 guards, but they're on a 30-minute rotation. We'll have 90 seconds when they change positions. 90 seconds to get through a locked door? Huey said. That's not a lot of time. Then we'd better not waste any, Butcher replied. They waited. The cold seeped deeper, making Huey's extremities go numb. He tried to imagine what the facility would be like inside. Hopefully warmer. Hopefully with answers about whatever BCL Red was. Hopefully with a way to stop Homelander that didn't involve Clark having to kill his own. Whatever Homelander was to him. The guards moved. For exactly 90 seconds, the entrance was unwatched. Go, Diana breathed. They ran. Huey's legs pumped, his lungs burning from the frigid air. They reached the entrance, a reinforced steel door built flush with the mountain, and pressed themselves against the wall. Frenchie immediately went to work on the lock, his tools clicking softly. 30 seconds, Mm's voice crackled through their comms. Murd, Frenchie muttered. This is more sophisticated than I thought. Military grade. It needs time. 20 seconds. Huey could hear footsteps now, getting closer. The guards were talking to each other in Russian, their voices carrying in the still air. 10 seconds. Almost. Frenchie's frozen fingers fumbled with his tools. There. The lock clicked. Butcher pulled the door open just enough for them to slip through, then eased it shut behind them. On the other side, the guards walked past, their conversation continuing uninterrupted. Everyone released a hell breath. Okay, Butcher said. We're in. The interior was nothing like Huey expected. Instead of the decrepit Cold War relic he'd imagined, the corridor they found themselves in was pristine. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The floor was clean, recently mopped. Doors lined both sides, each marked with Cyrillic labels Huey couldn't read. This wasn't some abandoned facility. This was active. Very active. They moved carefully, Diana taking point with her enhanced senses. More than once, she held up a hand, and they froze as footsteps approached. Twice they had to duck into side rooms as guards passed by, pressing themselves against walls as their hearts hammered. The facility was a labyrinth. Identical white corridors branching in all directions. They descended deeper, following the vague layout from Mallory's decades-old maps. though it was clear the facility had been massively expanded since then. This way, Diana whispered, pointing down a corridor that sloped downward. I can hear something. Machinery. And something else. They followed her down. The temperature was dropping again despite being underground. And there was a smell. Chemical. Sterile. Wrong. They passed doors marked with radiation warnings in Russian. Then more doors. More warnings. Whatever was down here, it was serious. Wait, Huey whispered. Do you hear that? Everyone stopped. There was a sound so faint Huey almost thought he'd imagined it. Whimpering. An animal whimpering. Huey, we don't have time for this, Butcher said. There's something alive down there, Huey replied, already moving toward the sound. It was coming from a side corridor. Petit Huey, no, Frenchie started. But Huey was already pushing open a door. The room beyond made his stomach turn. Cages. Dozens of them. Most contained decomposed remains. Rats, rabbits, what might have been a small primate. All dead. All showing signs of horrific experimentation. But in a cage at the far end, something was moving. A dog. A white Siberian husky with brilliant blue eyes. It was emaciated, its ribs visible through matted fur. But it was alive. And when it saw Huey, its tail gave a weak wag. Oh, buddy, Huey breathed, moving to the cage. What did they do to you? Huey, we need to leave, Diana said from the doorway. Now. I can't leave him, Huey said. The lock on the cage was old, frozen. He pulled at it, but it wouldn't budge. I can't just move, Diana said. She gripped the lock and pulled, her enhanced strength making short work of it. Take him and let's go. Huey scooped up the dog. It was lighter than it should have been, weak and malnourished. The animal pressed against him, and for just a moment, so brief Huey almost missed it, its feet left the ground. Just an inch, just for a second. Then it dropped back down, exhausted. Did that dog just float? Butcher asked. Later, Diana said firmly. We need to keep moving. They continued deeper, past more rooms filled with equipment Huey didn't recognize. Medical equipment, testing equipment, things that looked scientific and things that looked like torture devices. Then Diana stopped at a door. It was larger than the others, reinforced with multiple locks. Frost was forming on the thick industrial glass window, despite being inside. In here, she said. Whatever they're doing, the heart of it is in here. Frenchie examined the lock. This is sophisticated. Military biometric scanner, keypad encryption. This will take time. How much time? Butcher asked. 10 minutes. Maybe 15. We don't have 15 minutes. MM's voice crackled through the comm, guard rotation in 5. And I'm seeing increased activity. They know something's wrong. Then work faster, Butcher growled. The minutes crawled by. Huey held the dog close, feeling its heartbeat gradually slow as it calmed. The animal seemed to trust him completely, which only made the guilt worse. What had they done to this creature? Almost got it. Frenchie's tools clicked. There. The door hissed open, releasing a blast of cold air that made even Diana flinch. The room beyond was massive, the size of a warehouse, and it was clearly the facility's core. The first thing Huey noticed was the temperature. It was below freezing. The second thing was the lights. Not harsh fluorescence, but softer, stranger lights. Green lights, coming from rocks. They were everywhere, in containment units lining the walls, dozens of them glowing with a sickly green light that made Huey's skin crawl just looking at them. What the hell are those? MM asked through the comm. I don't know, Diana said, but her voice was strained. But they're making me feel wrong. Me too. Kimiko signed, which Frenchie translated. She looked pale, holding her stomach. Everyone stay away from them, Butcher ordered, though his voice was weak, and he was sweating despite the cold. The center of the room was dominated by workstations covered in equipment and papers. And beyond them, in the very center, was a chamber. Cylindrical, massive, filled with clear liquid that reflected the green light. There was someone in it. Mon Dieu, Franchi breted. They moved closer. The chamber was clearly cryogenic, with tubes and wires running in and out. Monitors displayed vital signs that meant nothing to Huey. But the man inside, there was no mistaking who it resembled. The face was similar to Homelander's. Same strong jaw, same features, but older, harder. The hair was dark, not blonde. And the suit was different, dark green and brown with an eagle emblem on the chest. Soldier Boy, Butcher whispered, his face white. Holy fuck, that's Soldier Boy. He's alive. Mallory said the Soviets took his body, Diana said, circling the chamber. But this isn't a corpse. He's in suspended animation. Why? Huey asked. Why keep him alive? Look at this, Diana interrupted, pulling document from a nearby workstation. Papers covered in Russian text with complex diagrams. Medical photographs that made Huey's stomach turn. Images of Soldier Boy strapped to tables, his chest split open, electrodes attached to exposed tissue. I need to translate. She began reading, her expression shifting from curiosity to confusion to horror. What does it say? Butcher demanded. It's a project file. Goose. Project Cadmus. Diana's voice was shaking. Started in 1984, after they captured him. Last updated 6 months ago. What kind of project? Diana read silently for a moment, her face growing paler. They experimented on him. For years. Exposure to those green rocks combined with chemical agents, genetic manipulation, forced cellular regeneration while keeping him conscious. Her voice cracked. They tortured him. Systematically. Trying to weaponize him. Weaponize him how? Frenchie asked. They discovered his body began producing an unknown form of radiation after prolonged exposure to the rocks. It emanates from his chest cavity. They document measuring it, try to understand it, but Diana flipped through more pages. They don't know what it does, just that it exists, that it's dangerous, that it killed 3 researchers when he had an episode in 1987. An episode? Asked through the comm. He wakes up sometimes. The cryo doesn't always hold him. Jesus Christ. Breathed through the comm. They try to replicate it. Every experiment failed. He's unique, too dangerous to use, too valuable to destroy, so they keep him here. Frozen. A weapon they're too afraid to deploy. The alarm blared before anyone could respond. Red lights flooded the room. A computerized voice spoke rapid Russian on repeat. Fuck, Butcher yelled. They know we're here. Armed response heading your way. Shouted through the comm. At least 12 men. 90 seconds. Which way out? Huey yelled, clutching the dog. There. Diana pointed to an exit on the far side. Move. They ran. Behind them, Huey could hear boots pounding metal floors, shouting in Russian, weapons being readied. They almost made it. The guards burst through the door just as they reached the far exit. Huey saw them, 12 men in tactical gear, assault rifles raised, shouting commands in Russian. The first shots rang out. Diana moved with superhuman speed, putting herself between the guards and the team. Bullets sparked off her bracelets. Kimiko launched herself at the nearest guard with lethal precision. But there were too many. Trained, professional, coordinated. A guard threw something, a flashbang. It detonated with blinding light and deafening sound. Huey stumbled, his vision swimming, clutching the dog to his chest. When his sight cleared, chaos had erupted. Kimiko was fighting 3 guards. Diana had engaged 4 more. But the guards had body armor, weapons designed for superhuman threats. And 1 guard, panicking or following protocol, Huey couldn't tell, fired at the chamber's control panel. Sparks flew. Alarms changed pitch. The liquid in the chamber began to drain. Oh no, Huey breathed. The tubes disconnected. Monitors went from steady readings to frantic beeping. The glass retracted into the floor. Soldier Boy's eyes opened. At first, nothing. He just floated as the liquid drained, eyes unfocused, confused. Then his feet touched the chamber floor. He drew in his first breath in 40 years. The sound he made wasn't human. It was a roar, rage, confusion, pain all mixed together. Every guard froze, turning to look at him. Soldier Boy looked at his hands, at the guards, at the glowing green rocks around the room. His face twisted with recognition and horror. Then he lunged at the nearest guard with inhuman speed, grabbing the man by the throat and hurling him across the room like a rag doll. The guard hit a concrete wall with a sickening crunch. Soldier Boy, Diana called out, stepping forward with her hands raised. We're not your enemy. We're here to. He turned to her, and there was no recognition in his eyes. No sanity. Just decades of torture and rage looking for a target. He charged. Diana met him head-on, catching his first punch with her bracers. The impact sent a shock wave through the room, cracking the floor beneath them. Get out, she screamed at the others. Go. Kimiko signed something quick and sharp. Frenchie translated, she's staying. Kimiko, no. Frenchie started. But Kimiko was already moving, flanking Soldier Boy while Diana kept his attention. They moved in perfect coordination, Diana absorbing his brutal strikes while Kimiko attacked from the sides, precise and lethal. The remaining guards opened fire. Bullets ricocheted off Diana's bracers, and Kimiko moved too fast to hit, but Soldier Boy just walked through the gunfire like it was rain. He grabbed a guard's rifle, crushed it in his hand, then used the bent metal to club another guard unconscious. We need to help them, Huey shouted. They can handle it. Butcher grabbed his arm. We need to. Soldier Boy's chest began to glow. It started as a faint luminescence beneath his suit, then grew brighter, more intense. Green light seeped through the fabric like blood through a bandage. Diana saw it. Her eyes widened. Everyone down. Huey dropped, covering the dog with his body. But Diana didn't run. She put herself between Soldier Boy and the exit where Butcher and Frenchie stood frozen. The beam erupted. It wasn't like an energy blast from Homelander. This was something else entirely, a wave of dark green radiation that rippled through the air like heat shimmer, distorting everything it touched. It hit Diana square in the chest. Her scream was primal, agonized, not from impact, but from something deeper, more fundamental. She flew backward, crashing into equipment hard enough to crumple reinforced steel. The beam swept across the room like a searchlight. A guard caught in it simply exploded, not from force, but from something internal, his body unable to withstand whatever that radiation did. Then it hit Kimiko. She'd been mid-strike, her fist driving toward Soldier Boy's kidney. The beam caught her side, and she froze. Just stopped, mid-motion, her face contorting in confusion and pain. Then she dropped, hitting the ground hard and not getting up. The beam cut off. Soldier Boy stumbled, his chest still glowing but dimming. He looked around with wild, unfocused eyes, at the dead guards, at Diana's crumpled form, at Kimiko lying motionless. Then he ran, not toward them, but away, crashing through a reinforced door like cardboard, his footsteps echoing as he disappeared into the facility's depths. The surviving guards stared at the destroyed doorway for a heartbeat. Then one shouted orders in Russian, and they ran after him, leaving the team behind in the wreckage. Diana. Huey crawled to where she'd fallen. She was conscious, but barely, eyes unfocused, blood trickling from her nose. Diana, talk to me. Can't feel. She slurred. Her hand reached up, trying to grab his arm, but her fingers were weak, trembling. Everything's wrong. So weak. Her eyes rolled back. Unconscious. Kimiko. Frenchie reached her, cradling her head with shaking hands. Kimiko, please. Please wake up. She was breathing, conscious even, eyes open and staring at the ceiling. But there was something in those eyes Huey had never seen before. Fear. Pure. Absolute terror. Frenchie tried to help her sit up. She gasped. Actually gasped, a sound Huey had never heard her make, and her face went white with pain. He pulled his hand back. It was covered in blood from where he'd grabbed her arm. Kimiko looked at her arm, at the dark bruise forming there, spreading like spilled ink under her skin. Kimiko never bruised. Kimiko never bled from something so minor. Kimiko always healed. No, Frenchie Guisperth. His voice broke. No, this cannot be. Kimiko tried to sign something, but her hands were shaking too much. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. Pain, Huey realized. She was in pain, and her body didn't know how to process it. We need to move, Butcher said. His voice was strained, mechanical. This place will be crawling with more guards in minutes. And Soldier Boy's loose. We need to leave. Now. Diana can't walk, Huey said, checking her pulse. Strong, but her breathing was shallow. And Kimiko. I'll carry Diana, Butcher said, already moving toward her. Frenchie, you got Kimiko. Huey, keep that dog. Let's go. We didn't get what we came for. MM said through the comm, his voice tight. No BCL red. No weapon. We found something worse, Butcher replied, carefully lifting Diana. She was dead weight in his arms, her head lolling. We found out what happens when you piss off a walking weapon of mass destruction. That'll have to be enough. Where's extraction? North exit. But Butcher, there are guards everywhere. You can't fight your way out. Not carrying them. Butcher looked at his hands. Looked at Diana unconscious in his arms. Looked at Frenchie struggling to lift Kimiko, who whimpered. Actually whimpered with every movement. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial of green liquid. What is that? Frenchie asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. Butcher didn't answer. He put the vial in his mouth and bit down, swallowing glass and liquid together. Butcher, what did you? Frenchie started. Then Butcher's body convulsed. Green light spread through his veins like wildfire, visible beneath his skin. His muscles spasmed, bulging. Steam rose off his body despite the cold. The floor cracked beneath his feet. Everyone stared in horror as Butcher dropped to his knees, Diana still in his arms. His body twisted, changing, becoming something more. When stopped, maybe 5 seconds, maybe 30, Butcher stood. But he looked different, bigger, stronger. His veins were still glowing faintly green, pulsing with unnatural light. His eyes had changed too, pupils dilated to near black. What the fuck? MM's voice exploded through the comm. Butcher, what the fuck did you just take? Huey grabbed Diana. Butcher said, his voice distorted, deeper, resonating in a way that wasn't quite human. I'll clear a path. Butcher, what was that? Frenchie demanded, still cradling Kimiko. What did you take? Something that'll keep us alive. Now move. Huey lifted Diana, surprised at how easy it was. Adrenaline, he told himself. Just adrenaline giving him strength. Except it wasn't just adrenaline, because he could feel it now, the tingling in his legs, the warmth spreading through his body. The vial he'd stolen from Butcher 3 days ago, hidden in his pack. The one he'd injected himself with in the truck before they'd entered the facility, hands shaking, knowing Butcher would never approve. The Temp V was kicking in. Huey, Frenchie was staring at him, at how easily he'd lifted Diana. Huey, your eyes, they're glowing. Mon Dieu, they're glowing. What? MM's voice was dangerously quiet through the calm. Huey too? Both of you took that shit. Later, Huey said, his voice coming out stronger than ever before. The world looked sharper somehow. He could hear things, guards shouting 3 corridors away, alarms blaring throughout the facility, the rapid beating of Frenchie's panicked heart. We need to move. Now. Butcher was already gone, a blur of enhanced speed. They followed the sounds of his passage. Impacts, screams, bodies hitting floors with bone-breaking force. When they caught up, guards were scattered like bowling pins, unconscious or worse. Jesus Christ, Butcher, and breathe through the calm, you didn't have to. They were armed and shooting. Butcher replied, his voice still wrong. I made a choice. They burst out of the facility into the frozen wasteland. Was there with the truck, engine running, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Get in, he roared. They piled in without order or care. Diana was still unconscious. Kimiko was conscious but clearly in agony, tears streaming down her face as every bump and jostle sent fresh waves of pain through her unprepared nervous system. The dog pressed against Huey, whimpering. Go, Butcher yelled. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on ice before finding purchase. Behind them, guards poured out of the facility like ants from a kicked hill, but they were already too far away for effective fire. It was only when they were 5 miles down the road that spoke. Both of you. His voice was quiet, deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. Both of you took that shit. Huey started. I didn't know the kid had it. Butcher said, his voice returning to something closer to normal as the temp V began to wear off. Must have lifted it from me. I don't care who took what. Slammed the steering wheel hard enough to crack it. That stuff is poison. It's killing you. And he couldn't finish, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel. A groan from the back cut him off. Diana was waking up. What? She mumbled, her voice slurred. What happened? Soldier boy, Huey said, still holding her steady. His beam hit you. You've been out for 20 minutes. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a train. Diana tried to sit up. Her face went pale, then green. I'm going to be sick. Huey barely got a bag to her in time. She retched violently, her entire body shaking. I feel wrong, she gasped between heaves. So weak, and I can't hear anything. Not like before. Everything's muffled, distant. She tried to listen, to use her enhanced hearing. Nothing. My powers. Oh God, my powers are gone. Mine too. Kimiko signed weakly, her hands shaking with the effort. Each movement clearly caused her pain. Can't heal. It hurts. Everything hurts so much. How do you live like this? How long? Diana asked, her voice rising with panic. How long until they come back? No one answered. How long? She screamed. We don't know, Butcher said quietly. The documents, they mention the radiation, that it exists, but they don't know what it does. We just found out. Then we get those documents, Diana said, trying to sound commanding, but her voice cracked. We find out. We fix this. The documents are back at the facility, said, which is now on the highest alert possible. Then we find another copy. Project Cadmus. Russian military. There have to be. Diana stopped, her hand going to her mouth. She was going to be sick again. We need to get to a safe house, Butcher said. Regroup. Get them stable. Then we figure out next steps. The truck went silent except for the engine, the wind, and Diana's occasional retching. In Huey's arms, the dog whimpered, pressing its face into his chest. It's okay, boy, Huey whispered, even though nothing about this was okay. None of it was okay. Safe house, outskirts of Yakutsk, Russia, June 25th, 2022. The safe house was a shithole. That was professional assessment as they pulled up to the decrepit building on the edge of the city. It was one of Diana's contacts, someone from her past who owed her a favor. The kind of place that didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. Perfect for people who'd just broken into a Russian military installation and released a walking nightmare. Inside was barely better than outside. One large room with a few cots, a bathroom that looked like a health hazard, and a kitchen that consisted of a hot plate and a mini fridge that might have been older than But it was warm, and it was safe. For now. Diana was on one of the cots, awake, but barely. The color still hadn't returned to her face. Every few minutes, she'd try to do something, stand up, lift a water bottle, and fail. The realization that her powers were gone was hitting her again and again, each time like a fresh wound. I can't even open a bottle, she said, her voice hollow. I can't. I am useless. You're not useless, Huey said from where he sat with the dog. You're hurt. There's a difference. Is there? Diana laughed bitterly. Without my powers, what am I? Just another person. Weak. Vulnerable. Mortal. Kimiko was worse. She lay on another cot, and the pain was clearly agonizing. Every breath seemed to hurt. Every movement was careful, measured, like she was afraid of breaking herself. Frenchie had found ancient painkillers in the bathroom cabinet, but they barely seemed to touch her suffering. "We need to get them to a hospital," Frenchie said, pacing the room like a caged animal. "They need real medical attention. Diana is one thing, but Kimiko, she's never felt pain like this before. Her body doesn't know how to handle it. Look at her." Kimiko lay curled on her side, tears streaming silently down her face. She tried to sign something, but her hands shook too much. "We can't," Imam said from his position at the window. "We're in Russia. We just hit a black site. Every intelligence service in the country is looking for us. We show up at a hospital, we're dead or in a Russian prison within the hour. Then what do we do?" Frenchie's voice cracked. "Just let them suffer. We get them out of the country," Butcher said. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, looking more exhausted than Huey had ever seen him. The Temp V had worn off hours ago, leaving him hollow and shaking. "Diana's got contacts. We use them, get to a border, then out of Russia entirely. Then we can get them proper help." "And how long will that take?" Frenchie demanded. "Days? A week? Look at her, Butcher. She's in agony." "As long as it takes," Butcher replied, his voice flat. Huey was sitting in the corner, the white dog curled in his lap. The animal had barely left his side since they'd escaped, and Huey had to admit the presence was comforting. The dog seemed to sense his distress, pressing close and occasionally licking his hand. His own hands were shaking. The Temp V crash was hitting him hard. Nausea, weakness, a pounding headache that felt like his skull was trying to split open. "What are we going to tell Lois?" Huey asked quietly. "We promised we'd come back with a weapon to stop Homelander. Instead, we let Soldier Boy loose, got Diana and Kimiko hurt, and..." He looked at his hands. "And we used that stuff. The Temp V." "Temp V," Imam repeated, turning from the window. His face was carved from stone. "So it has a name. How long have you been using it, Butcher? And don't you dare lie to me." Butcher was silent for a long moment. "Few months. Since March." "March," Imam said flatly. "Since March. And where'd you get it?" "Sam Lane gave it to me. Said it was experimental. Said it might give us an edge against Vought." "Sam Lane?" Imam's voice was dangerously quiet. "Lois's father. The general who runs Black Ops and doesn't give a single shit who gets hurt in the process. That's Sam Lane. The very same. And you didn't think to mention this to anyone?" Imam's voice was rising now. "You didn't think we should know you were juicing yourself with experimental super drugs?" "It was my choice," Butcher replied. "Like hell it was." Moved away from the window, his fists clenched. "You're part of the team, Butcher. Your choices affect all of us. And now Huey's taken it too." "I made that choice myself," Huey interrupted. "I stole it from Butcher. He didn't know. I took it because..." He trailed off, trying to find words. "Because I was scared. Because I didn't want to be the weak one anymore. Because I wanted to be able to protect people instead of always needing protection." "And how do you feel now?" Imam asked, his voice softening slightly despite his anger. Huey thought about it, about the rush of power he'd felt, the clarity, the strength, the feeling of invincibility. But also about the crash afterward, the hollow feeling, the way his hands were trembling so badly he could barely hold his water bottle. "Like shit," he admitted. "Like absolute shit." "Good," Imam said. "Because that's what it does to you. It poisons you from the inside. And if you keep using it, it'll kill you. Both of you." The room fell silent except for Kimiko's occasional pained whimpers. "How long?" Diana's voice was weak from her cot. "The beam. It took our powers. How long until they come back?" Everyone turned to look at her. "What?" Frenchie asked. "The documents said the radiation exists, that they've measured it, but they don't know what it does." Diana tried again to sit up, managed it this time, though she looked like she might pass out from the effort. "So there must be theories, projections, something. Was the exposure brief? Sustained? Will we heal?" No one had an answer. "We need those documents." Huey spoke up, his eyes glancing at Diana. He could swear her hair was grayer than it had been only a few hours ago. "We can't go back," Butcher responded. He had managed to stop his hand shaking, but only barely, and even then, he had to keep in a fist to do that. "We will look for the files later. If it was there, then some wanker Russian general will have a copy. At the moment, we need to get out of Russia." "Any idea how we do that, with the FSB, Russian army, and basically everyone else looking for us?" Imam asked, crossing his arms as he stared at Butcher, a look of barely concealed disgust on his face. "Yeah, I do," Butcher grunted back as he reached into a bag and took out a secure satellite phone. "And I fucking hate it." Butcher typed in a number that he had clearly memorized, but it also clearly made him sick if the deep scowl on his face was anything to go by. The room was silent for a good few minutes as Butcher just stood still waiting for the phone to connect, his scowl deepening the longer it rang for. "You there?" Butcher asked when he heard the phone finally connect, but was only greeted by silence. "What do you need?" Everyone froze, and looked at each other as the voice of Sam Lane. Did you find the weapon? You know damn well it wasn't a fucking weapon. Butcher spat out before taking a deep breath, knowing he needed to stay calm as this was the only way out they had. We need extraction, it all went shit, and our exit plan is fucked. Where are you? Sam Lane asked. His calm, emotionless voice was making Butcher's blood boil, but he could swallow his anger for the moment. Some frozen shithole called Yakutsk. Butcher managed to respond without letting his anger enter his voice. We have 2 injured, they need medical attention. There was an audible silence for a few minutes as Butcher just listened to a muffled voice, typing and moving paper on the other end of the line. His eyes turned to Huey, who was stroking the dog he had saved, his eyes looking at the starved creature, whose eyes only briefly flicked up to his before returning to stare at nothing. Understood, there's an airport in a village east of the city. Megan Airport, Sam Lane finally replied, his voice a little more on edge than before, and Butcher could hear the tension in his voice. Be there in exactly 3 hours, 12 minutes. You'll meet a man named Janos Prohaska. He will fly you out. He'll only wait 20 minutes. After that, you're on your own. Before waiting for a response, Butcher heard the line go dead and just grimaced as he dropped the phone and smashed it under his foot before looking at the room. Frenchie, go steal us a fucking car. Butcher sighed as he moved off, looking like he was grabbing his things, but in truth was looking a place to be sick out of sight, as the temp V burned itself inside of him. And let's out of this fucking shithole. League Headwaters, Los Angeles, California. June 29th, 2022. Annie stood on the roof of the repurposed warehouse that Clark had converted into the League's New York base of operations. Her phone pressed to her ear as she watched the sun begin its descent over New York. She called Alex 3 times now, and each call had gone straight to voicemail. She was in New York in an effort to get the plan moving forward, something Alex had agreed to help her with, but he was running late, very late. Come on, pick up, she muttered, hitting redial again. This time, he answered. Annie, hey, sorry, was in the middle of something. Where are you? She could hear wind in the background, the distant sound of traffic. You were supposed to be here an hour ago for the patrol briefing. Yeah, about that. Alex's voice was strained. I'm actually in New York. Got a call from Ground Hawk about a situation. Thought I'd check it out before bothering you, or... What situation? Annie's grip tightened on the phone. Alex, what's going on? There's an apartment building in Hell's Kitchen. Completely leveled. Not collapsed, leveled. Like someone took a giant eraser to it. He paused, and Annie could hear a tension in his voice that made her stomach sink. And Annie, there's something else. People are getting sick. Not from the building collapse. From something else. Annie's stomach dropped. I'm on my way. Don't go inside until I get there. Too late for that, Alex said, and she could hear the grimace in his voice. I'm already shit, hold on. The line went dead. Alex? Annie pulled the phone away, staring at it. No signal. She tried calling back. Nothing. Fuck. She didn't bother with the stairs. She simply launched herself into the air, her light powers allowing her to descend to the ground safely. She made a beeline to the private jet that was waiting on a nearby runway. It was Clark's personal one, but he had said anyone was free to use it for League business. It's not like he needed it for himself. The flight from LA to New York would normally take over 5 hours, but she gave the pilot a no uncertain look that told her she would get there a lot quicker. However, one thought kept pounding in her head. Clark, where the hell are you? The thought came unbidden, followed by a wave of worry that made her chest tight. He'd been gone for days. No calls, no messages, just gone. After that press conference with Kara and Stan Edgar, he'd vanished. Even Lois didn't know where he was, and that scared Annie more than she wanted to admit. Because if Lois didn't know where her husband was, then something was very, very wrong. Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, minutes later, Annie touched down on the street outside what had once been a residential building. She had run and leapt through the streets after touching down. Holy shit, she breathed. Starlight. Groundhog's voice drew her attention. The hammer-handed hero was stumbling toward her, his face pale and sweating despite the evening chill. Thank God. We need to. He doubled over, retching. Jesus, are you okay? Annie moved to help him, worried that his rehab was failing and that he was drunk on the scene, but he held up a hand. Don't. Something's wrong here. Something in the air. I've never felt anything like it. He looked up at her, and Annie saw genuine fear in his eyes. Alex is still in there. So are 3 of the super-dupers. They went to look for survivors, but a scream cut him off. High-pitched, terrified, definitely joy. Annie didn't think. She just ran into the empty space where the building had been, her light powers flaring to illuminate the settling dust. The ground was scorched, blackened. Debris lay scattered, but not in the pattern of a normal collapse. Everything was pushed outward, as if from a central explosion. And in the center, kneeling in the ash and rubble, was Alex. Alex, Annie called out, but he didn't respond. He was staring at something in his hands, his face slack with horror. As she got closer, she saw what he was holding. A costume piece, bright yellow and red. Part of Joy's uniform. Annie, Alex's voice was hollow. I think I found them. He gestured weakly to his left. Annie followed his gaze and immediately wished she hadn't. The super dupers. At least, what was left of them. Their bodies were scattered across the blast site. But that wasn't what made Annie's stomach heave. It was the way they looked. Like they'd been burned. Not by fire. By something else. Something that had eaten through their enhanced flesh like acid. What could do this? Annie heard her own voice, distant and small. Not what. A new voice sounded out behind them. Who? Annie spun around to find a figure standing at the edge of the blast site. A man, but there was something wrong about him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked to be scavenged clothes, which were mismatched and looked like he had grabbed whatever he could. His skin was pale, almost gray. He also looked rough. He had an unkempt beard, and his hair looked like he hadn't washed it in decades. When he moved, he left a faint trail of green light in the air. Who the hell are you? Annie demanded, her hands already glowing, as she spun to face the man. The man winced as if he had a constant headache as he looked at the scene, a look of disbelief, regret, and disgust on his face. I just woke up. I used to come here years ago. This wasn't my fault. There was this music I was just looking for. The man looked around as if he was in a state of shock himself, but he was too articulate for Annie to fully believe it. I was just trying to leave when this fat fucking idiot came up to me, him and this black fella. It wasn't my fault. Fear bitch attacked me. He took a step forward, and Annie felt it then. A wave of wrongness that made her skin crawl and her stomach turn. It was like standing too close to a microwave, that prickling sensation of invisible radiation. Alex, run, she shouted, turning her head to make sure that Alex was following her orders. But Alex was already on the ground, his body convulsing. The green glow around the stranger intensified, and Annie felt her own strength begin to fade. Her light flickered. Died. What are you doing? She gasped, falling to one knee, as she felt bile building up in her throat and her blood started to boil. Nothing personal, sweetheart, the man said, his voice distorting. There was something wrong with his chest, something glowing beneath his baggy shirt and hoodie. I'm just looking for some people. This was a mistake. And I can't let people lose faith in their greatest hero because a retard, a bitch, and a carpetbagger stuck their nose in where it didn't belong. The glow intensified. Annie screamed. And then, impossibly, the pressure stopped. Annie looked up through tears to see a figure standing between her and the stranger. Tall, muscular, cape billowing in a wind that didn't exist. Clark, she sobbed with relief. But Superman didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on the stranger, and there was something in his expression Annie had never seen before. Clark's skin was sickly green, worse than Alex's and hers. He was also, for the first time to her eyes, sweating. Who are you? Clark managed to sound authoritative as he stood up to his full height. Having placed Annie gently on the ground, she could see the tension in his shoulders. Name's Ben, but you might know me better as Soldier Boy. Clark didn't like the smile on the now-named face. Well, if it isn't the Boy Scout himself. I've seen your picture. You look like a pussy son in that cape and tight. Tell me something, Superman. You know where I can find a sons of bitches who put me in that Russian hell? I don't know what you're on about. What Russian hell? Clark's eyes widened fractionally as he looked at the man's face, recognition steeping in. You're supposed to be dead. Yeah, well, death's not as permanent as people think. Soldier Boy tilted his head, studying Clark. You're strong. I can feel it. But let me tell you something I learned in that facility. They're strong, and then they're strong. And I'm fucking Soldier Boy. His chest began to glow brighter. Clark moved. Annie tried to shout, but her voice came out as a whisper. Clark didn't move. He planted his feet, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and waited. The beam erupted from Soldier Boy's chest in a wave of sickly green energy. It slammed into Clark like a freight train, and for the first time in her life, Annie watched Superman be pushed back. Not just pushed, driven back, his feet digging trenches in the ground as he was forced backwards by the sheer power of the blast. The beam cut off. Soldier Boy was panting, his chest still glowing. Impressive. Most would be paced by now. Clark lowered his arms. His costume was scorched, smoking, but he was standing, albeit he looked like hell, and Annie saw blood dripping down his scorched, burned forearms. I'm not most. No, Soldier Boy agreed. You're not. Which means you might actually survive long enough to tell me where I can find the people who did this to me. I don't know what you're talking about, Clark said, his voice starting to come out in pants as he sucked in air, trying to cool down as he began to sweat more. But you need to stop. Now, before anyone else gets hurt. Hurt? You want to talk about hurt? I've been hurt for 40 years. Poked, prodded, tested, tortured by the Russians. All because some bastards on my own team sold me out. Soldier Boy laughed as he gestured to the devastation around them. It was a harsh, bitter sound as his face twisted into something ugly. Payback. That's what they called themselves. Well, I'm here to collect. Payback is disbanded. Clark said carefully. Thea retired or dead. Well, shit, some are getting off too easy. I'll just have to make the others really pay to make up the difference, Soldier Boy spat. Although he sounded confident, Clark saw the man, too, was looking uneasy as he swayed a little. But there's one I'm really interested in. Black Noir. You know where I can find him? Clark's expression flickered, just for a moment. But it was enough. You do know, Soldier Boy said, his smile returning. However, his voice was panting now as sweat started to form on his brow, as the light in his chest dimmed. Good. We will catch up, but I think that was enough fun for one day. With that, Soldier Boy turned and walked away. He was stumbling a little, but he was looking more steady the future. He moved away from the building, and no longer his chest wasn't glowing anymore. Annie half expected to see Clark rush into the man's retreating figure, but Clark just stood still for a few moments before he collapsed onto one knee and threw up on the ground. It was a black sludge, and it was the last thing she saw before she slipped out of consciousness. Stan Edgar's office, penthouse level, same time. Ryan sat cross-legged on the floor of Stan Edgar's or Zod's office. He guessed, a holographic display floating in front of him. Kryptonian text scrolled past at a pace that would have given most humans a headache, but Ryan absorbed it easily, his enhanced cognition processing the information as fast as it appeared. The Science Guild was responsible for maintaining Krypton's technological superiority. Kayla Kara's personal AI female voice narrated from the display. Under the leadership of the House of L, they developed faster-than-light travel, transdimensional research, and countless innovations that benefited all Kryptonian society. Ryan frowned, pausing the playback with a gesture. Kayla, can I ask you something? Of course, young master. This mission, the one Kal-El's father created, was it worth it? All the people who died on Krypton, all the people on Earth who've died because of Compound V. He looked down at his hands. Was saving the survivors worth all that? Kayla was silent for a moment, processing. That is a philosophical question I am not equipped to answer definitively. However, I can provide you with Jor-El's own words on the subject. The hologram changed, showing a recording of Clark's biological father. Jor-El looked tired, his face lined with stress, but his eyes held a determination that reminded Ryan of Clark. If you're watching this, then both the mission and I have failed, Jor-El began. Tiredness was clear in voice, but there was a resolve there as well. The mission was never about saving Krypton. It was about saving our people, our culture, our knowledge, but never at the cost of another world's people, never at the cost of innocence. Jor-El leaned forward, as if he could see through time to the person watching. It was why we selected Earth. Its strategic unimportance and limited development mean no other power will be interested in it, making it the perfect staging ground for the mission. Even the human race is undeveloped and violent, so no random anthropological study groups will be present. However, I will stress that this does not make us superior to the humans. No species or culture has a right to claim dominance over another. The universe is infinite and beyond even our understanding. Every culture, every person has value and the potential to become better. Ryan watched as Jor-El's eyes stared into his, as if this wasn't a recording meant for a random lucky survivor of their doomed world. It was like the man was standing in front of him. Ryan could feel Jor-El's words touch something inside of him, a part he was only just becoming aware of. If the mission requires innocent blood, then abandon it. Let Krypton die as it was meant to. Do not let our survival be purchased with the suffering of others. That is not the Krypton I wish to preserve. Remember, the highest ideals of our people are founded in one simple truth. All life is precious. Roa's light guide you. The message ended. Ryan sat in silence, processing. Kayla, he said slowly, does General Zod know about this message? I believe so. This message was accessed 255 times by General Zod since Kara's pod was recovered from human control, and once by Kara since her full recovery. Kayla responded. However, the general explained to Kara that this message was only meant to be played if the mission was impossible to be completed, which is currently not the case. But he didn't know that when he first accessed this, which means Ryan trailed off, his mind racing as he stared at the holographic display that was paused mid-lesson. Which means Zod isn't following Jor-El's mission. He's following his own. That would be a logical conclusion. Ryan stood up abruptly. I need to talk to Kara. He found her on the penthouse balcony, staring out over the city. She'd changed out of her costume into something more casual, though she still wore the pendant Zod had given her. The wind whipped her long blonde hair around her face, but she didn't seem to notice. Kara. Ryan approached carefully. He still couldn't bring himself to call her grandmother, as Zod insisted he did. It was just too weird. She looked younger than his mom had. Can we talk? She turned, and Ryan was surprised to see tears on her cheeks. Ryan. Yes, of course. Are you okay? Kara wiped her eyes, looking embarrassed. I'm not certain. Since arriving on this world, I have felt conflicted. The general is a good man, an honorable man. But sometimes when I look at this city, at these people, she gestured to New York below them. I wonder if we have the right to leave them to die. D. Ryan's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean, Kara looked at him, and in her eyes, Ryan saw genuine distress. The plan. Once we retrieve the survivors from the Phantom Zone and leave Earth, K-Layer estimates that without change, humans will be extinct in less than 100 years, maybe 200. All a result of a lack of understanding and simple care. And you're okay with that? Ryan asked. He looked out at the city too. He was feeling so conflicted now. When Zod had offered him a fresh start with people that would never do what Homelander did, he had jumped at it. He had been tired of watching the world praise a murderer, tired of watching Clark save everyone and it make no difference to anything. Since his powers kicked in, he could taste the pollution in the air, see the atmosphere become poisoned, and watch as the ozone layer burn away. And all he could hear with his new powers? People complaining about petty things, saying horrible things, praising superheroes, and just ignoring that the world was on fire around them. No. Kara's response was immediate and fierce. No, I'm not okay with that. But the general, he says, this is the only way. That humanity will never change, cannot change. That they're already destroying their own world through greed and short-sightedness. So what difference could we make? She turned back to the city, her shoulders slumping. And part of me wants to believe him. Because I miss home, Ryan. I miss my family. My mother is alive, somewhere in the Phantom Zone, waiting for us to rescue her. How can I abandon her? How can I choose these strangers over my own blood? Ryan moved to stand beside her. Because it's not about choosing strangers over family. It's about choosing what's right over what's easy. Kara looked at him, surprise on her face. Clark told me that once, Ryan continued, when I was struggling with my powers. He said that having power means making hard choices. And the hardest choice is sometimes choosing to do the right thing, even when it hurts. Even when it means losing something you love. You are very wise for one so young, Kara said softly. I'm not wise. I am scared. Ryan admitted. I'm scared that I made the easy choice. Clark once told me that I didn't have to be a hero, that he believed that it was my choice, that using my powers to save people was an obligation, that I didn't have to do it, that I could have a normal life if I wanted it. Kara frowned, her eyes narrowing at Ryan. His words didn't sound like something she expected Kal-El to say. Everything she had learned about her cousin suggested he would say the opposite, that people with power had a moral obligation to help, that they must help, that standing by whilst disasters happened made you just as guilty as if you had caused it yourself. However, Ryan just let out a small chuckle as he looked at her, seeing the confusion there. He guessed he had probably looked the same as well. I didn't get either. I didn't really until just now, either because it is a choice. Clark didn't tell me not to help people, but that it was my choice. Because it should be a choice, but it should be a simple one. You should want to help. You should just choose to help. Because if you force people to help then no one will, because it will end up just being a job that you expected someone to do, and that person will expect you to praise them. It has to be your choice. He turned to face her fully. Kara was shocked, as for a moment she didn't see her father who Ryan and Homelander resembled. Nor even did she see Kal-El's righteousness or Jor-El, who had been a towering figure of certainty in her life. No, she was seeing Ryan as if he had just aged a full decade before, as if in that moment he was a grown man full of conviction and certainty all his own. Kara, I found a message. From Jor-El. He said that if the mission required innocent blood, it should be abandoned. That saving Krypton wasn't worth destroying another world. I know, Kara's eyes widened, and her voice was quiet as she responded, looking into her grandson's eyes. But that was meant for... It means Zod's plan. This plan? It's not what Clark's father wanted. It's something else. Kara was quiet for a long moment, staring out over the city. Then she reached up and grasped the pendant around her, spoke softly, her voice almost lost to the wind as she stared at the pendant. My uncle gave me this when I left Krypton. It contains the Zone Index, the key to finding everyone in the Phantom Zone. But he also told me something else when he gave it back to me when I woke up. He said, guard this with your life, Kara. We must do what is necessary to save our people. Remember your oath. Your oath. Ryan asked. He knew what she had sworn because it was part of his studies, but he wanted Kara to tell him. The one I swore when I joined the military guild. I swore to protect, to defend, and to uphold our people and our people's ideals no matter what. Kara ran a thumb across the pendant with her eyes, looking at her reflection, trying to see herself again. Ideals only mean something if you hold on to them no matter what, even in the face of extinction. So what are you going to do? Ryan asked. His question caused Kara to look up at him, her eyes staring into his. Make a choice. Chapter 30, Fracture d'Alliance. Safe House, Long Island, New York. June 27, 2022. Diana stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks. 37. She'd counted them 12 times now, because it was the only thing she could do that didn't require the strength she no longer had. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her cot. She reached for it, her hand shaking with the effort. The screen lit up with notifications, news alerts, all screaming the same story in different words. Super duper massacre in Hell's Kitchen. 3 heroes dead in mysterious attack. Ladyfold, Bobby Battling, and the Black Hole killed. Diana's hand clenched around the phone. The screen cracked under the pressure. Not from superhuman strength, but from the desperate, futile rage of someone who had nothing left but grief. Murd. Frenchie looked up from where he sat with Kimiko. Diana, your hand. I don't care about my fucking hand. Diana's voice cracked. She tried to sit up, managed to get halfway before her arms gave out. She collapsed back onto the cot, tears streaming down her face. Joy, Bobby, James, they're dead. They're dead, and I'm lying here like a useless. You're hurt, Huey said quietly from his corner. Crypto was curled in his lap, occasionally floating a few inches before settling back down. The dog seemed to sense the tension in the room, pressing closer to Huey as if for comfort. I'm nothing, Diana spat. Without my powers, I'm just an old woman who can't even lift a water bottle. And my kids, her voice broke completely. I was supposed to protect them. That was the whole point. Keep them safe. Give them a better life than I had. And now 3 of them are dead because I wasn't there. She grabbed the cracked phone again, scrolling through the articles with shaking hands. Each one had photos. Joy's bright smile at a charity event. Bobby bouncing around at a kid's hospital visit. James using his powers to help clean up after a hurricane. They've been good kids, trying to do good, and they died screaming. I should have been there. Diana's scream was raw, primal. I should have been protecting them, not chasing some ghost in Siberia, not looking for a weapon that turned out to be a walking fucking nightmare. I trained them. I taught them how to fight, how to use their powers, how to be heroes. And for what? So they could die in some random attack by a man I helped release. I helped kill them. I helped release the monster that murdered my kids. Diana, Huey started. Don't. Diana closed her eyes. Just don't. She lay there for a long moment, tears streaming silently down her face. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Her voice cracked as she stared at the ceiling. However, Huey could tell she wasn't seeing the ceiling but her wards as she spoke. I can see them, you know, when I close my eyes. Joy crying when she died. Her mascara running. She always wore too much mascara. I kept telling her to go lighter, but she said it made her feel pretty. Bobby dying trying to protect her. They found his body covering hers. He'd bounced in a soldier boy's beam. Just bounced right into it, like he thought his powers would save him. Diana, please. Frenchie's voice was gentle. And James, Diana continued as if he hadn't spoken. James would have tried to absorb the radiation. Thought he could stop it, put himself in its path and save everyone. And it tore him apart from the inside out. The coroner's report said he was barely recognizable. Huey felt sick. How do you know all that? Because I called in favors, Diana replied. She turned her head to look at them. Made people tell me everything. Every detail. Every horrific, awful detail of how my kids died. You know what the worst part is? They died believing they were doing the right thing. Believing they were heroes. And they were. They were heroes. Better than me. Better than any of us. Kimiko signed something, her hands shaking from the effort and pain. She says they would be proud to have had you as a teacher. Frenchie translated, his own voice thick with emotion. Then they were idiots, Diana said bitterly. Because I failed them. Just like I failed everyone who ever believed in me. MM's phone buzzed, breaking the oppressive silence. He pulled it out, read the message, and frowned. Butcher wants to meet. Says he's got a lead on tracking Soldier Boy down. Where? Huey asked, grateful for something. Anything to break the suffocating atmosphere. Some dive bar in Queens. MM looked at Diana and Kimiko. You two gonna be okay here? Do we have a choice? Diana asked bitterly. Frenchie squeezed Kimiko's hand gently. She winced at even that light touch, and he immediately loosened his grip. I will stay with them. Someone needs to be here. Thank you, MM said. He looked at Diana for a long moment. We'll make this right. I promise. Diana didn't respond. She just closed her eyes and went back to counting cracks in the ceiling. As MM and Huey left, Frenchie heard her whisper, 38. There are 38 cracks. I miscounted before. League headquarters, Los Angeles, California, same time. Clark sat in the empty conference room, staring at the news footage on the massive screen. Hell's Kitchen, the destroyed building, the 3 bodies they'd found in the rubble. He'd watched the footage a dozen times now, analyzing every frame, trying to understand what had happened. The apartment building had been completely obliterated. Not collapsed, obliterated. As if something had simply erased it from existence. The surrounding buildings showed scorch marks and radiation burns. And in the center of it all, 3 young heroes had died. Annie limped in, supported by Alex. Both looked sick, faces pale, dark circles under their eyes. Annie's usually vibrant blonde hair looked dull, lifeless. Alex moved like every step hurt, one hand pressed against his ribs. "You should be in the hospital," Clark said, not looking up from the screen. "Tried that," Annie replied, carefully lowering herself into a chair. Every movement was deliberate, calculated. They ran every test they could think of. Blood work, X-rays, MRIs, even brought in specialists from Johns Hopkins. "Can't figure out what's wrong with us." "Radiation poisoning," Clark said quietly, as he looked at another screen that was detailing the coroner's report on Joy's body. "From Soldier Boy. I felt it too when I fought him. It's not like anything I've encountered before." "But you're recovering," Alex observed. He sat down heavily, wincing. "We're not. Not as fast, anyway. Every day, I feel a little worse. A little weaker." Clark finally looked at them. They looked even worse in person than he'd thought. Annie's skin had a grayish tinge, and there were fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. Alex's normally olive skin looked ashen, and his hands trembled slightly when he wasn't concentrating on keeping them still. But when Annie's hands moved, they sparked with light. Dimmer than usual, flickering like a dying bulb, but still there. When Alex spoke, there was still that subtle sonic resonance in his voice that made people instinctively lean in to listen. "Your powers are still there," Clark said, his eyes refocusing as he scanned her and Alex, and what he saw wasn't overly negative, but it wasn't great. "Yeah," Annie confirmed. She held up her hand, and light flickered weakly across her palm. "Just, everything takes more effort now. Like I'm running on half power. Quarter power, maybe. Using my abilities makes me feel worse, like it's burning through whatever reserves I have left." "Same," Alex added. He spoke carefully, his voice barely above a whisper. "I tried using my sonic scream yesterday in a controlled test. Managed about 3 seconds before I passed out. Took me an hour to wake up. You should recover. It will just tame some time." Clark's jaw tightened as he looked at Alex, wincing again. "I'm sorry. If I'd stopped him sooner." "Don't," Annie interrupted. "You did stop him. You saved me and Alex. If you hadn't shown up when you did." She didn't finish the sentence. "The super dupers," Clark said, his eyes returning to the screen. Ladyfold, Bobby Battling, the black hole. They were so young. "I know," Annie said softly, as her eyes glanced at the news report that was depicting a picture of each of the fallen heroes. Joy, Ladyfold. She was so excited about everything. Every mission was an adventure to her. Bobby couldn't stop moving, literally. Even when he wasn't using his powers, he was bouncing his leg, tapping his fingers. And James was quiet, thoughtful. He told me once that he wanted to be a teacher, work with kids, help them control their powers. "They died trying to do the right thing," Clark said, his hands clenched into fists. "They saw someone destroying the neighborhood, and they stepped up, just like they were supposed to. And they died for it," Alex said flatly, his tone earning him a glance from Annie and hard stare from Clark. "Because they weren't strong enough, weren't fast enough, weren't ready for something like Soldier Boy." The words hung in the air like an accusation. "We should have been there," Annie said, taking her eyes off of Alex and looking at Clark. "The League. That's what we built it for, right? To handle threats like this." "We didn't know," Clark replied. "So what do we do now?" Alex asked, because sitting here watching news footage isn't helping anyone. Clark stood up, wincing slightly. The radiation burns on his arms were healing, but slowly, painfully. He could still feel the wrongness of Soldier Boy's energy, like it was trying to unmake him at a cellular level. "We find him. Find out what happened to him," Clark said, placing his hands on his hips as he tried to project an air of confidence. "Before he kills anyone else. Do we know where he is?" Annie asked. "No," Clark admitted. "After our fight, he disappeared. Could be anywhere by now. But he mentioned his old team. Payback. Said he was looking for revenge. Most of them are still alive," Alex said. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through files. "I did some research after Hell's Kitchen. Crimson Countess is hiding in a trailer park upstate. Not very well, I might add. Gunpowder died recently, so we don't have to worry about him. The TNT twins bought a compound in Vermont, mostly stay out of the public eye. Mindstorm's apparently in a care facility with early onset Alzheimer's. He's been there for almost a decade." "What about Black Noir?" Clark asked as he pressed a button and caused the file he had on Payback to appear. He was Soldier Boy's second in command. If anyone knows what really happened to the man, it's him. "That's the problem," Alex answered, moving forward in his chair looking up at Clark. "Noir vanished from Vought Tower 3 days ago. Just walked out during his night patrol and never came back. No one's seen him since. Not even Homelander knows where he is. I checked with Maeve." "Why would he run?" Annie asked, a frown appearing on her face. "Because he knows Soldier Boy's coming for him." Clark replied, his eyes narrowing at the image of Vought's former #1 team. "Whatever happened, Noir was part of it. And now he's hiding. We start with the others, Crimson Countess, the twins, we warn them. Get them into protective custody before Soldier Boy finds them." "You think they'll cooperate?" Annie asked skeptically. From what I've heard, most of Payback hate each other, and they aren't the most stable. Might not believe Soldier Boy's actually alive. They will when I show them the footage, Clark replied, and explain the alternative. Soldier Boy's not stable. He's not discriminating. Anyone connected to Payback is a target. What about Diana? Annie asked carefully. And the boys? I heard they were out of the country tracking something down, that they were looking for something. Clark's expression shifted, confusion flickering across his face. Out of the country? What were they doing? I don't know exactly. I swear I would have told you. But you weren't around, Annie admitted, shifting as Clark's eyes narrowed at her. But Diana mentioned something about them going after a weapon. Some old Cold War thing that was supposed to be able to stop Homelander. And it was right before Soldier Boy showed up in New York. The implications hung in the air. You think they found him? Alex asked. That they're the ones who released him? It would explain the timing, Annie said. And why Diana been so quiet. Usually, after a mission, she checks in. Let us know she's okay. But I haven't heard from her since before Hell's Kitchen. Clark pulled out his phone and dialed. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. She's not answering, he said, trying to keep the worry from his voice. Try Huey, Annie suggested. Clark did. Same result. Then Then Frenchie. All went to voicemail. That's not good, Alex observed. No, Clark agreed. It's not. He tried one more number. This one answered on the second ring. Clark. Lois' voice was tight, strained. Is everything all right? I saw the news. No, that's why I'm calling. Do you know where the boys are? Clark. Lois paused. It caused Clark's frown to deepen. All I know is something went wrong. Really wrong. I don't have all the details, but Diana and Kimiko were hurt. My dad arranged their extraction, but he won't tell me what happened. Clark's stomach dropped. How badly hurt? I don't know. He just said they needed medical attention and time to recover. Lois' voice cracked slightly. Clark, I think whatever they found caused New York. I think they're the ones that caused this. Clark closed his eyes. I need the address. I'll text it to you. But Clark, be careful. If they're responsible for what happened in Hell's Kitchen, they're not going to want to talk about it. I'll be careful, Clark promised. He hung up and looked at Annie and Alex. I need to go to Long Island. Check on Diana and the boys. We're coming with you, Annie said, starting to stand. No, Clark said firmly. You both need rest. Real rest, not whatever you've been doing. I'll check on them, find out what happened, and then we'll figure out our next move. Clark, Annie started to protest. That's not a request, Clark interrupted. His voice was gentle but firm. You're both sick. Using your powers is making it worse. I need you two to recover, because when we go after Soldier Boy again, I'm going to need backup that can actually fight. Annie wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Not when she could barely walk across a room without getting dizzy. Fine. But you call us the second you know something. I will, Clark promised. He headed for the door, then paused. And Annie? Alex? Thank you for everything you're doing. I know this is hard. After he left, Annie and Alex sat in silence for a long moment. You think the boys really released Soldier Boy? Alex asked. Yeah, Annie said quietly. Edo. And I think they're going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives. If we all don't die first, that is. Victoria Newman's office, Bureau of Superhuman Affairs. New York, evening, June 27th. Victoria Newman was working late, again. The Hell's Kitchen disaster had every politician in the city screaming for answers. And as head of Superhuman Affairs, she was expected to provide them. The problem was, she had no answers. Just more questions. Her desk was covered in reports. Casualty lists. Witness statements. Radiation readings that made no sense to anyone. 3 dead heroes. 47 dead civilians in the initial blast. Another dozen hospitalized with mysterious symptoms that doctors couldn't explain. On top of it, the statements made it clear a glowing man had fled the scene and no one could find him. One question dominated her mind. What the hell had caused it? She had tried to reach out to Stan Edgar and find out if he had a rogue Supe, or if this was a plan to scare the public with a super terrorist attack. However, she was interrupted by her office door opening without a knock. Newman looked up, ready to tear into whoever had the audacity to barge in, and froze. Homelander stood in her doorway, cape billowing slightly in the air conditioning. But something was different about him. His usual cocky smile was gone. His eyes were cold, calculating. And there was something in his posture, a tension like a coiled spring ready to snap. We need to talk, Homelander said, closing the door behind him. She heard the lock click. About what? Newman asked, her hand subtly moving toward the panic button under her desk. Don't. Homelander's eyes flashed, causing her to stop fully. I can hear your heartbeat. I can hear you reaching for that button. I can hear the blood pumping through your veins. I wouldn't. Newman froze. She'd known Homelander was powerful, but hearing him describe what he could sense about her body was deeply unsettling. What do you want? Information. And an alliance. Homelander moved to her desk, picking up a framed photo of her and Zoe. He studied it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Nice kid. She's what, 10 now? 11. Put that down, Newman said, her voice ice. Or what? Homelander asked, but he set it down anyway. You'll pop my head? Please. We both know that won't work on me. I've seen you try it on others. Very impressive, by the way. I didn't figure out until recently, but once I started really listening, well, the way you manipulate blood vessels? Fascinating. Newman's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, Homelander replied pleasantly. He sat down in the chair across from her, making himself comfortable. You're the head popper, the one who killed Raynor, the one who took out half the congressional committee. You've been Edgar's secret weapon for years. If you're here to threaten me, I'm here to offer you a partnership, Homelander interrupted, because we have a common problem. What problem? Stan Edgar, Homelander said. What do you really know about him? And I mean really, not the corporate bio, not the public image, the truth. Newman studied him carefully. This was dangerous territory. He's the CEO of Vought. He's been in charge for decades. He's brilliant, ruthless, and completely in control. He's an alien, Homelander interrupted, from the same place as Superman, as Kara. They're called Kryptonians. Newman's expression didn't change. Edgar had told her years ago, when he'd recruited her from Red River, when he'd explained the real purpose behind Compound V, behind everything Vought had done. But she let Homelander continue, curious where he was going with this. For over a century, he's been manipulating humanity, Homelander continued, seemingly not fazed at her lack of reaction. Creating Supes, building Vought, all part of some grand plan to, well, it's all really sad, really. What's sad? Newman asked, her voice flat and neutral as she looked at the deranged man who, according to her calculations, was fast becoming obsolete. Homelander leaned forward. He's planning to leave, to abandon Earth entirely, take his people and fuck off to the stars. Newman felt her carefully controlled expression slip for just a moment. What? She was quick to recover, but Homelander smiled as he saw the gap in her armor. Newman herself felt off balance. She knew about the plan. Stan Edgar had promised her a great life, a powerful one if he helped her, and if the plan ever went forward, she would have a place in the new world he created. She would be his right-hand woman, running the humans of the world as the Cryoptans ruled and protected them. That was the plan. He's got some grand mission, Homelander said. Save the Kryptonian race, rebuild their civilization on some other planet. There's something called the Phantom Zone, a prison dimension where, apparently, survivors are trapped. He's building a device to free them. And once he does, Homelander gestured broadly. He's gone. And everyone here, everyone he's used, manipulated, controlled for decades, gets left behind. How do you know this? Newman asked. She felt cold as she could see that Homelander, despite being mad, was telling her the truth. Because he told me. Homelander replied, his smile going cold and dark as he looked at her. Told me I'm a mistake, a human product that isn't fit to be kin to his precious niece, that I am worthless. So I decided to keep tabs on him since then. You've been spying on Edgar. I've been protecting my interests, Homelander corrected. And I heard him talking to Kara. About the plan. About leaving. About how humanity is... He paused, his face darkening. Expendable. Newman was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing. Edgar had explicitly told her if the plan happened, Krypton would be raised again on Earth, and she would have a place of honor in his regime. He never said anything about leaving. But looking back, there had been signs. The way he'd been distancing himself from Vought operations. The increasing autonomy he'd given her. The sense that he was preparing for something. Why are you telling me this? She asked finally. Because you're useful, Homelander said bluntly. You have political power, connections, leverage, and more importantly, you understand how the game really works. You're not some idealist like Superman, pretending the world can be saved through good intentions. You know that power is the only thing that matters. And you want to use that power. We want to use that power, Homelander corrected. When Edgar leaves, and he will leave, Vought's going to need new leadership. The Bureau is going to need direction. The whole infrastructure he's built over a century is going to need someone to run it. And you think we should be the ones running it? I know we should be the ones running it, Homelander replied. Think about it. You've got the political angle covered. I've got the power. Together, we control the narrative. We decide who lives, who dies, who gets to be a hero. We become the ones calling the shots. Newman stared at him for a long moment. You're insane. I am practical, Homelander countered. Edgar used you, recruited you from Red River, trained you, positioned you exactly where he wanted you, made you into his secret weapon, and now he's planning to leave you behind like yesterday's garbage. The words stung because they were true. Newman had spent years, her entire adult life, working for Edgar, killing for him, crossing lines she could never uncross, all because he'd promised her power, protection, and a future for her and Zoe. And now he was planning to abandon her. What exactly are you proposing? She asked carefully. An alliance, Homelander said. You help me navigate the political landscape. I provide the muscle. We watch Edgar's plan unfold. And when he leaves, or it fails, because Superman's too much of a Boy Scout to let him abandon Earth, we're there to pick up the pieces. And if his plan doesn't fall apart, if he actually leaves, then we do the same, Homelander replied. Superman's already questioning everything. He might fuck off with them. And if he doesn't, he won't stand against the people's elected representative. Kara is devoted to Zod. I've seen it. One push in the right direction. After they are gone, and Edgar's whole empire can be ours. And when it is, we will be the ones standing on top, ready to rebuild everything in our image. And my daughter? Stays safe, Homelander said immediately. Protected. Hell, she'd be safer than she is now. No more hiding what you are. No more pretending. We changed the rules entirely. Make it so Supes like us don't have to hide anymore. Newman studied him. Homelander was unstable, dangerous, and narcissistic. But he was also powerful, incredibly powerful. And if Edgar really was planning to abandon Earth, to leave her behind after everything she'd done, I need guarantees, she said finally. Such as, Zoe stays completely out of this. Whatever we do, whatever happens, she's untouchable. Off limits. No one touches her, not for leverage, not for anything. And she becomes one of us. Done. Homelander agreed immediately, shrugging his shoulders, not caring in the slightest. And I want black noir. Homelander raised an eyebrow. Why? Because he's Edgar's creature. More than you, Newman replied, her voice cold and detached as she stared into Homelander's equal cold and uncaring eyes. His personal enforcer, his spy. I've watched Noir for years, and he reports everything back to Edgar. Every conversation, every meeting, every potential threat. If we're doing this, I want him gone. Interesting, Homelander said. Noir has disappeared. Vanished 3 days ago. Just walked out of Vought Tower and hasn't been seen since. Even I don't know where he is. Find him, Newman said, with a bit of force that made Homelander smile. And when you do, I want to be the one who deals with him. Homelander studied her for a moment, then smiled. You know, I like you. You're direct. No bullshit. Not like Edgar with his endless manipulation and games. He stood up. All right, I'll find Noir, and then we'll decide together what to do with him. Is that all? Newman asked. One more thing, Homelander said. I need regular updates on Edgar's plan. Everything you know, everything you learn. No surprises. Agreed, Newman said. And I want the same from you. If you learn something about Edgar's plans, about the Phantom Zone, about when he's planning to leave, I want to know immediately. Deal, Homelander said. He held out his hand. Partners. Newman looked at his hand for a long moment. This was a line she couldn't uncross. An alliance with Homelander meant blood, meant violence, meant becoming exactly the monster she'd spent years pretending not to be. But Edgar was abandoning her. After everything, every person she'd killed, every line she'd crossed, every piece of her soul she'd sacrificed, he was leaving. And she'd be damned if she let him destroy her future without a fight. She shook Homelander's hand. Partners, she said. Homelander's smile was genuine now, reaching his eyes. Excellent. Now let's talk strategy. First, we need to consolidate power. Make sure that when Edgar's plan falls apart, we're in position to take over. That means they talked for another hour, planning, strategizing, building the framework for a new world order, one where they would be in control. Neither of them noticed the small camera in the corner of the office, the one that had been installed 6 months ago by Edgar himself, the one that was recording everything. O'Malley's bar, Queens, New York, same time. The bar was exactly the kind of dive Butcher loved, dark, dirty, and full of people who minded their own business. The bartender didn't ask questions. The patrons kept their heads down, and the back booths were perfect for conversations you didn't want anyone to overhear. and Huey found him in his usual spot, nursing a whiskey. He looked terrible, pale, shaking, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days, which he probably hadn't. The Temp V had fully left his system now, leaving him hollow and weak. You look like shit, observed, sliding into the booth across from him. His voice was flat, emotionless, the way it got when he was trying to control his anger. Feel like it too, Butcher replied. His hand shook slightly as he raised the glass. But we've got work to do. You said you had a lead on Soldier Boy, Huey said, sitting beside him. Huey looked almost as bad as Butcher. Haunted eyes, slumped shoulders, the weight of what they'd done in Russia pressing down on him. Edo. Butcher pulled out a folded piece of paper and slid it across the table. Got it from the legend. Old Payback's safe house in Pennsylvania. Soldier Boy's been spotted in the area. I want that fucker more than anyone else. Unfolded the paper, studying the address. But the man's a walking disaster. We can't take him. You saw what he did in Hell's Kitchen. 3 dead heroes, dozens of dead civilians, and Diana and Kimiko. Yeah, I know what he did, Butcher said. His voice was harder than usual, which is why we need to know what he's after, who he's targeting. If we can get ahead of him, we might be able to stop the next massacre. Or we could call Superman, countered, crossing his arms as he stared at Butcher. Let him handle it. That's what he does, right? Save people from monsters. Superman's got his hands full with his alien family drama, Butcher replied, waving a hand dismissively. Besides, by the time we get him involved, call a meeting, explain the situation, get everyone on the same page. Soldier Boy could kill a dozen more people. Studied Butcher carefully. There was something off about him. Something more than just the Temp V withdrawal. What aren't you telling us? Nothing, Butcher said. I just want to track down Soldier Boy before anyone else dies. Bullshit, said flatly. I've known you too long, Butcher. You got that look. The one you get when you're planning something stupid. I don't know what you're talking about, Butcher replied, taking another drink. Huey looked between them, sensing the tension. Guys, can we focus? 3 people are dead. Diana and Kimiko lost their powers. We need to figure out what to do about Soldier Boy. The kid's right, Butcher said. We can argue later. Right now, we need to move. Legend says Soldier Boy's been in that area for at least 12 hours. He's looking for something, or someone. If we get there now, we might be able to figure out his next move. Didn't look convinced, but he nodded slowly. All right, when do we leave? Tonight, Butcher said. The 3 of us. Get there before dawn, scope the place out, see what we're dealing with. What about Diana and Kimiko? Huey asked. Shouldn't we check on them first? Frenchie's with them, Butcher replied. They're safe. And honestly, they're better off not knowing what we're doing. M's eyes narrowed further at that, but he didn't push. Fine. But we do this smart. No heroics. We observe, we gather intel, and then we decide our next move. Agreed? Agreed, Butcher said easily. Too easily. They finished their drinks and left, suspicions growing with every step. Abandoned safe house, rural Pennsylvania, pre-dawn, June 28, 2022. The drive to Pennsylvania took 4 hours. 4 hours of tense silence, broken only by occasional small talk that felt forced and hollow. Drove, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few minutes to check on Butcher in the back seat. Huey sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, lost in his own thoughts. They arrived at the safe house just before dawn. The place was exactly as the legend had described, abandoned, isolated, perfect for someone who didn't want to be found. The building was set back from the road, hidden by overgrown trees and tall grass. Windows boarded up, no signs of recent activity, except for the tire tracks in the dirt road leading to the house. Fresh, recent. Someone's been here, observed, parking the car a quarter-mile away. Maybe in the last day or 2. Could be anyone, Huey said hopefully. Squatters. Kids looking for a place to party. Or it could be our boy, Butcher said, checking his weapon. He had a 9mm pistol and a knife. Not much against the Supe, but better than nothing. Pulled out his thermal scanner, a piece of military hardware he'd acquired years ago. He aimed at the house and watched the screen. After a moment, a heat signature appeared. Someone's in there, said quietly. Single person. Ground floor. Not moving much. Could be a squatter, Huey repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. Only one way to find out, Butcher said. He opened his door. You cover the back. Make sure he doesn't run. Huey, you're with me. We go in quietly, assess the situation, then decide our next move. Nodded and moved around the building, silent as a ghost despite his size. Decades of military training hadn't left him. However, instead of approaching stealthy going for a window, Huey found himself following Butcher to the front door, weapons drawn. The door wasn't locked. It swung open with a soft creak that seemed deafening in the pre-dawn quiet. Inside, the safe house was a time capsule. Furniture from the 1980s, covered in dust and cobwebs. Old magazines are scattered on tables. A TV with a cracked screen. And in the living room, sitting on a ratty couch surrounded by old files and photographs, was Soldier Boy. He looked up as they entered. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with red. His beard was unkempt, his hair greasy. He looked up as they entered. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with red. His beard was unkempt, his hair greasy. He was wearing scavenged clothes that didn't quite fit, a flannel shirt too small for his frame, jeans that were stained and torn. And immediately, his chest began to glow with that sickly green light. Easy, Butcher said, raising his free hand while keeping his gun pointed at the floor. We're not here to fight. Then why are you here? Soldier Boy's voice was rough, damaged from decades of disuse and torture. There was something hollow in it, like a man who'd forgotten how to be human. We need to talk about what you're planning, Butcher replied carefully. About who you're going after. Why would I tell you that? Soldier Boy's chest glowed brighter, casting green shadows across the room. Because if you don't, more innocent people are going to die, Butcher said, his eyes go to Huey, and something in his voice made Huey doubt the man for a second. Like those kids in Hell's Kitchen. Soldier Boy's expression darkened. That wasn't supposed to happen. They attacked me. I was just trying to find. I was looking for something. And then they came at me with their powers, screaming about protecting people. I defended myself. They were 17, 19, and 21, Huey said, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger. They were kids trying to protect the neighborhood. And you murdered them. I didn't murder anyone, Soldier Boy snapped. They attacked first. What was I supposed to do? Let them kill me. They couldn't have killed you if they tried, Huey shot back. You're invulnerable. They were nothing to you. You could have just left. Flown away. Because they wouldn't stop, Soldier Boy replied, his voice rising. They kept coming, kept attacking. The girl, she tried to trap me in some shitty pin move. The kid who bounced, he kept hitting me over and over. And the other one, the black fella. He paused, his expression shifting to something that might have been regret. He tried to absorb my radiation. Thought he could stop me, but it was too much. I tried to pull it back, but he trailed off, staring at his hands. But it tore him apart, Huey finished, his voice hollow. Yeah, Soldier Boy said quietly, without much on as he stared at Huey with lifeless eyes. It did. The room fell silent. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, casting long shadows through the boarded windows. The back door burst open. entered, weapon raised, and immediately saw the situation. Butcher and Huey facing Soldier Boy, the Supe's chest glowing, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Nobody move, said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Soldier Boy's head snapped toward him, and for a moment, his chest flared brighter. But then he seemed to deflate slightly, the glow dimming. 3 against 1, Soldier Boy observed. You boys got balls. I'll give you that. But if you're here to take me in, to hand me over to Vought or the government or whoever, you're going to have a problem. We're not here for that, Butcher said. The words caused everyone to turn and look at the man. MM's eyes narrowed. Butcher, what the hell are you doing? What needs to be done? Butcher replied. Then, without warning, he spun around and pointed his gun at him. Sorry, Marvin, but I need you to put the gun down. The world seemed to freeze. Have you lost your fucking mind? MM's voice was deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that came before an explosion. Put the gun down, Butcher repeated. His hand was steady, his finger on the trigger. I don't want to shoot you, but I will if I have to. Huey, MM said, not taking his eyes off Butcher. Tell me you're not part of this. Huey stood frozen, his face pale. His own gun hung limply at his side. Butcher, what are you doing? Why should I have done from the start? Butcher replied, his eyes not leaving MM for a second. Gun, now, or I put a bullet in your leg, and we have this conversation while you're bleeding. Stared at him for a long moment. Years of friendship, of fighting side by side, of trust built through shared trauma and loss. All of it crystallized into this single moment of betrayal. Slowly, lowered his weapon. Then he tossed it aside, sending it skittering across the dusty floor. You're making a deal with him, said. It wasn't a question. That's what this is. You're making a deal with Soldier Boy. Smart man, Soldier Boy observed from the couch. His chest had dimmed completely now, as he watched the drama unfold with something like amusement. Butcher, this is insane, Huey said, his voice rising. He killed 3 people. He stripped Diana and Kimiko of their powers. We can't trust him. I don't need to trust him, Butcher replied, his gun still trained on him. I just need to use him. Use him for what? Demanded. What the fuck are you planning? Butcher didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Soldier Boy. You want revenge on payback. The ones who betrayed you, sold you out to the Russians. I can help with that. Ow, Soldier Boy asked, leaning forward slightly. I know where they all are, Butcher said. Crimson Countess is living in a trailer park in upstate New York. Gunpowder's in a pine box already. The TNT twins have a compound in Vermont. Mindstorm's in a care facility outside Philadelphia, and Black Noir. Butcher paused. Well, Noir's disappeared. But I got contacts. People who can find him. And in exchange? Soldier Boy asked, tilting his head at the Englishman. In exchange, you help me with a problem. Butcher set his eyes still on him, ready to shoot the second a man tried anything. There's someone who needs to be dealt with. Someone only you can handle. Homelander, Soldier Boy said. It wasn't a question. Among others, Butcher confirmed. No, Huey said, stepping forward. No, Butcher. I know you hate Homelander. We all do. But this, unleashing Soldier Boy on him, that's not justice. That's just trading one monster for another. Is it? Butcher asked, finally looking at Huey. Homelander's killed hundreds. Thousands, probably. He's raped women, terrorized entire cities. And he gets to walk around playing hero while everyone pretends he's not a monster. At least with Soldier Boy, we know what we're getting. A walking nuclear reactor who can't control his powers. Spat out, anger radiating off of him in hateful waves. The man that killed my family. Who killed 3 kids by accident. Yeah, much better. It wasn't an accident, Soldier Boy interjected, causing every eye to turn to him, even Butcher. I knew what I was doing. I didn't have a choice. They wouldn't stop attacking. You always have a choice, Huey said. That's what Clark taught me. No matter how hard things get, you always have a choice. Clark? The fucking pussy in tights, Soldier Boy's eyes narrowed. You mean Superman? Yeah, Huey said. Superman. The guy who could probably bench press a mountain, but chooses to help people instead. The guy who has every reason to become a tyrant, but doesn't. Because he chooses to be better. And where was this Superman when I was being tortured in Russia for 40 years? Soldier Boy asked, anger in his voice as he stared at Huey. Where was he when I was being experimented on, poisoned with those green rocks, turned into a weapon? Where were any of your so-called heroes? You were supposed to be dead, Huey replied, stepping forward only for Butcher to pull him back with his free hand. Everyone thought you died in 1984. How could anyone save you if they didn't know you were alive? But they knew, Soldier Boy said. Vought knew. Edgar knew. They all knew I was alive, rotting in some Russian facility. And they did nothing, because I was inconvenient, a problem that had been solved. He stood up, and despite his disheveled appearance, there was something commanding about him, something dangerous. Huey took a step back as the man's eyes burrowed into him. So don't talk to me about choices, Soldier Boy continued. I made my choice. I survived, and now I'm going to make everyone who put me there pay. Even if innocent people die. Huey asked. There are no innocent people, Soldier Boy replied. Just people who haven't been caught yet. Shook his head. Jesus Christ, Butcher. You're really going to work with this psychopath? He's not a psychopath, Butcher said. He's a weapon, and I'm going to point him at the right targets. Like Homelander, said. And then what? After Homelander's dead, you really think Soldier Boy's just going to ride off into the sunset? He's going to keep killing, keep destroying, and every death after Homelander is on you. Then I'll deal with that when it happens, Butcher replied. Ow, demanded. You saw what his radiation did to Diana and Kimiko. You think you can stop him? You think anyone can stop him once he gets going? Superman can, Butcher said, the words surprising him as he narrowed his eyes at Butcher. If it comes to that, if Superman could stop him, he would have done it already, shot back, shaking his head in disgust at the man. But he can't, because Soldier Boy's radiation affects Kryptonians too. Clark barely survived their fight in Hell's Kitchen, and you want to unleash that on the world. I want to kill Homelander, Butcher said simply. Everything else is secondary. Stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a bitter, harsh sound. I'm done with you, Butcher. Spat on the floor as he shook with rage at the man. You want to make a deal with the devil? Fine. Do it without me. I'm going back to Diana and Kimiko, people who actually need help. And when I next see you, you fucking die. Marvin, Butcher started. Don't. Interrupted. Don't try to justify this. Don't try to make it sound reasonable. You're going down a dark path, Butcher. And I'm not following you anymore. In fact, I will fucking stop you. He turned to Huey. You coming? Huey stood frozen, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to go with to walk away from this insanity. But he thought about Annie, sick from Soldier Boy's radiation. About the Super Dupers, dead because they'd try to stop him. About Homelander, still out there, still untouchable. And he thought about Butcher's words. I don't need to trust him. I just need to use him. I'm sorry, Huey said quietly, looking at him, but I'm staying. Looked like he'd been slapped. Huey, we're out of options, Huey said. Every other plan we've tried has failed. Maybe this is the only way. By becoming the monsters we're trying to stop? Asked. By doing what needs to be done, Huey replied. Shook his head slowly. Then he walked to the door, pausing in the threshold. When this all goes to shit, and it will go to shit, don't come crying to me. You made your choice. He left, and the sound of his footsteps fading into the morning felt like a death knell. Soldier Boy watched the door close, then looked at Butcher and Huey. Well, that was dramatic. Shut up, Butcher said. He lowered his gun finally, his hand shaking slightly. We have a deal or not? Maybe, Soldier Boy said, crossing his arms as he looked at Butcher. But I got conditions. Name them. First, we go after the rest of payback. All of them. No exceptions. I don't care if they're in nursing homes or witness protection or whatever. They all die. Done, Butcher agreed. We don't know where he is right now, but we'll help you find him. Second, after them, we go after Noir and I get to kill him myself nice and slow. And you two don't go crying about collateral damage. Fine, Butcher agreed. What else? Third, I want the people responsible for putting me in that Russian facility. Whoever authorized it. Whoever made the deal. Whoever signed off on letting me rot there for 40 years. I want them dead. That might be complicated, Butcher said. Most of the people involved are probably already dead. It was almost 40 years ago. Then find out who's still alive, Soldier Boy said, and give me their names. That's non-negotiable. All right, Butcher said. And in exchange? In exchange, I help you kill Homelander, Soldier Boy said. And anyone else you want dead, within reason. What about collateral damage? Huey asked quietly. What if more innocent people get in the way? What the fuck did I just say? They shouldn't get in the way, Soldier Boy replied. If they do, it's not our fault. That's not good enough, Huey said. We need guarantees that you'll try to minimize civilian casualties. Soldier Boy laughed. Kid, I was in the military for 20 years. I've seen more combat than you can imagine. And you know what I learned? There's no such thing as a clean war. P.P.D. That's just how it is. But you can try, Huey pressed. You could try to avoid killing innocent people. I'll try, Soldier Boy said, though his tone suggested he didn't care and just wanted the conversation over. But I'm not making promises I can't keep. Butcher looked at Huey. That's the best we're going to get. It's not enough, Huey replied. It's what we have, Butcher said. He turned back to Soldier Boy and held out his hand. Do we have a deal? Soldier Boy looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then he reached out and shook it. His grip was crushing, and Butcher felt his bones creak. Deal, Soldier Boy said. But if you betray me, if this is some kind of trap, I'll kill you both. And I'll enjoy it. Fair enough, Butcher replied, pulling his hand back and flexing his fingers. So what's first? Soldier Boy asked. First, we need to get you cleaned up, Butcher said. Can't have you walking around looking like you just crawled out of a dumpster. Second, we go to where the Countess is hiding and get working on that list of yours. I like you, Soldier Boy smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Then let's get started. Vought Tower, Penthouse, dawn, June 28, 2022. Ryan stood on the balcony, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like watching the last moments before a storm. Kara stood beside him, still wearing the pendant that contained the zone index. Her expression was conflicted, torn between duty and conscience. Are you ready? She asked, though her voice suggested she wasn't ready herself. Ryan nodded. Are you? No, Kara admitted. But we must try. We owe it to Kal-El, to ourselves, to everyone. They found Zod in his office, standing by the window with his hands clasped behind his back. He'd dropped his human disguise. Stan Edgar was gone, replaced by the true form of General Drew Zod. Taller, more imposing, his black eyes reflecting the morning light. The change was subtle but profound. Where Stan Edgar had been controlled and emotionless, Zod was simply present, solid, unmovable. Uncle, Kara said, stepping inside. Ryan followed, closing the door behind them. Zod didn't turn around. I know why you're here. Then you know what we're going to say, Kara replied. That I should change my plans. Stay on this world. Help these people. Zod's voice was carefully neutral, as if discussing the weather. Save them from themselves. Yes, Ryan said firmly. That's exactly what we're saying. No, Zod replied simply. The bluntness of it took Ryan aback. He'd expected an argument, debate, at least some discussion. But Zod's response was final, immovable. You didn't even hear us out, Ryan protested. I don't need to. Zod finally turned to face them. His expression was as cold and controlled as ever. You're going to tell me that Jor-El's message said the mission should be abandoned if it required innocent blood. We have a moral obligation to help Earth. That leaving would make us no better than those who let Krypton die. Yes, Kara said firmly. All of that. Uncle, we cannot simply. I've heard the arguments, Zod interrupted. I've considered them extensively, and my answer remains the same. We are leaving. But why? Ryan demanded, his voice rising. Why abandon billions of people? You have the power to help them, to save them, to show them a better way. Doi? Zod asked coldly. He moved to his desk, pulled out a tablet, and brought up a series of images. Tell me, young one, how would I save them? He swiped through the images. Botsonus, environmental disasters, political corruption, poverty, disease, suffering on a scale that made Ryan's stomach turn. This is humanity, Zod said. This is what they do to themselves. And you want me to stop it? How? By force? By becoming their dictator? By enslaving them to save them from themselves? By leading them, Kara said. By example. By. I tried that, Zod interrupted. For over a century, I have worked within their systems, guided their development, given them the tools, Compound V, advanced medical technology, clean energy solutions. Do you know what they did with those gifts? He swiped to new images. Compound V being used to create super soldiers. Medical technology being weaponized. Clean energy being monopolized by corporations. They turned every gift into a weapon, Zod said. Every opportunity into exploitation. Every chance to better themselves into another way to hurt each other. That is not ignorance. That is a choice. And I will not sacrifice what remains of Krypton for a species that refuses to save itself. That's not fair, Ryan protested. Not all humans are like that. Clark's parents weren't. Lois isn't. Huey, Frenchie. They're all trying to make things better. Exceptions, Zod replied. Statistically insignificant exceptions in a species defined by self-destruction. Then help them become the rule instead of the exception, Kara pleaded. Uncle, you are the most brilliant military mind Krypton ever produced. If anyone can find a way to help these people, it is you. Perhaps, Zod acknowledged. But it would take decades. Centuries, perhaps. And in that time, how many of our people remain trapped in the Phantom Zone? How many suffer in that timeless prison while I play savior to a species that doesn't want to be saved? He moved closer to them, his black eyes boring into Kara's blue ones. Kara, you have been awake for barely any time at all, Zod said, his voice softer but no less firm. You do not understand these people as I do. You see potential because you have not watched them waste it for 100 years. You see hope because you have not seen them extinguish it again and again. Then show me, Kara said desperately. Show me why you have given up on them. Prove to me that they cannot be saved. I don't need to prove anything. I am your commanding officer, Zod replied. He gestured to the window, to the city beyond. But if you need any, just watch. Watch what they do to each other. Watch what they do to their world. And then tell me I'm wrong to leave. Kara opened her mouth, but couldn't find the words as she stared out at the city and then back at the man she had admired all of her life. Our people are trapped and waiting. Zod answered her silence with a resolve that made Kara step back and curl into herself. Which is why I am building the projector. Within days, we will have access to the zone. Our people will be free. And then you'll leave, Kara said quietly. Take them and abandon Earth. Yes, Zod confirmed. We will go to the suitable world you found. Rebuild Krypton. Give our people a future. And the billions here? Ryan demanded, stepping forward, earning an approving look from Zod. What happens to them? Whatever they choose to happen, Zod replied, turning aside to them as he looked out of the earth, with barely concealed disgust. I'm not their keeper, not their savior, nor am I their destroyer. They will live or die by their own choices. As it should be. Uncle, please. Kara's voice broke slightly. Mother is in the zone. I know she is, and I want nothing more than to see her again. But Jor-El's message was clear. If the mission requires innocent blood, it doesn't, Zod interrupted, his tone cold and dismissive. I'm not killing anyone. I'm simply choosing not to save them. There's a difference. Is there? Ryan asked. If you have the power to help and you choose not to, isn't that the same as letting them die? No, Zod said firmly. It is called not being responsible for every tragedy in the universe. Krypton fell because our leaders believed they could control everything, solve every problem, save everyone. And in their arrogance, they destroyed our world. He moved back to the window, his hands clasped behind his back again. I will not repeat their mistakes, Zod said. I will save who I can, our people, and I will let everyone else make their own choices, even if those choices lead to their extinction. The room fell silent. Kara stood there, trembling slightly, her hand on the pendant. You've given up on them, Ryan said quietly. I never had faith in them to begin with, Zod replied, his voice softening as he looked at the young boy who reminded him of a dear old friend. Jor-El would have. He believed in the potential of any race to be better. And look where that would have got him. Stranded on a savage world, alone. While the humans who benefited from his sacrifice squabble over the scraps. It is as good that he didn't see his only son reduced and corrupted. Kal-El isn't corrupted, Kara responded with a passion that caused Zod to raise an eyebrow. No, Zod asked, his tone cold as he chuckled darkly. He was raised by humans. Thinks like them. Acts like them. Which is why he'll never understand that some species simply cannot be saved. Not because they lack the capability, but because they lack the will. Uncle, I am begging you, Kara said, tears forming in her eyes. Do not do this. Do not abandon these people. I'm not, Zod replied. I'm simply not responsible for them. There is a difference. Not to the people who will die, Ryan said. Everyone dies eventually, Zod said. The only question is whether they die having lived free or died being controlled by someone who thought they knew better. He moved back to his desk, effectively dismissing them. This discussion is over, Zod said. I have work to do. The projector will be ready in 3 weeks. For at most. When it is, we will retrieve our people and leave this world behind. And if we refuse to help? Kara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Zod looked up at her, and for the first time, Ryan saw something that might have been pain in his black eyes. Then you refuse, Zod said quietly. His tone caused Kara to flinch slightly. You are free to make your own choices, Kara, just as I am free to make mine. But do not ask me to sacrifice our people, your mother, for strangers who will not save themselves. Kara stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked out. Ryan followed. In the hallway, Kara stopped, her hands clenched into fists. She was shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of the choice before her. He's not going to change his mind, Ryan said. No, Kara agreed. He is not. So what do we do? Kara looked down at the pendant around her neck, the zone index. The key to freeing all the Kryptonian survivors, including her mother. I do not know, she admitted. Every choice feels wrong. If I help him, we abandon Earth. If I refuse, we abandon our people. There is no path that does not require sacrifice. What would your mother want you to do? Ryan asked. Karasimidet Sidney. My mother would tell me to follow my oath, to uphold Krypton's ideals no matter what, to choose honor over convenience. And your oath says? That all life is precious, Kara said quietly, that we protect the innocent, that we stand against injustice, that we do not abandon those in need. She looked up at Ryan. My oath says I cannot leave Earth to die, even if it means leaving your mother in the Phantom Zone. Kara's hand went to the pendant again, even then, because she would not want me to become the person Zod is. Cold, cynical, having given up on the universe. So we stop him, Ryan said. How? Kara asked. He is my uncle, my commanding officer, the man who helped raise me. How do I betray him? You're not betraying him, Ryan said. You're doing what's right. There's a difference. Kara looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. You are wise beyond your years, Connell, she said. Very well. We stop him. But we must be careful. Zod is formidable, and he will not give up his plan easily. Then we need help, Ryan said. We need to tell Clark. Tell Lois. Get everyone together. And what do we tell them? Kara asked. That my uncle plans to abandon Earth? That I have been complicit in his plans until now. We tell them the truth, Ryan said. All of it. And then we figure out how to stop him together. Kara nodded again, more firmly this time. She looked back toward Zod's office one more time, then down at the pendant. I'm sorry, Uncle, she whispered, but I cannot follow you down this path. She and Ryan headed for the elevator. They had a lot of people to call, and a world to save. To be continued. Chapter 31, Harrigasm. Rural Vermont, TNT Twins Compound, June 24th, 2022. The private estate looked more like a fortress than a home. High walls, security cameras on every corner, and a gate that wouldn't look out of place at a military installation. Alex adjusted his costume. The bright blue and silver of his supersonic outfit felt almost absurd given the circumstances, and pressed the intercom button for the 20th time. Come on, he muttered, glancing back at the unmarked van where 2 bureau agents waited. He didn't like working with them, but it's what they had to work with. Someone has to be home. The intercom crackled to life. What? Tommy? It's supersonic. Superman sent me. We need to talk. Tommy, please. This is serious. Soldier Boy is alive, and he's coming for you. Both of you. We can protect you, but you need to come with us. Now. There was a long pause. Alex could hear muffled arguing on the other end. Tommy and Tessa probably debating whether this was some kind of elaborate prank. Soldier Boy's dead, Tommy finally said. Has been for 40 years. The Boy Scout is just trying to ruin our fun, nice try, asshole. He's not dead. You are in danger. Alex pressed closer to the intercom, desperation creeping into his voice. I'm trying to save your lead, Dash. You can fuck off, wetback. The intercom went dead. Alex stood there for a moment, staring at the silent speaker. He pulled out his phone and dialed Annie. Hey, she answered on the first ring. He could hear wind in the background. She was flying. Any luck? Yeah. No. They won't even listen. Won't even open the gate. They think I'm trying to crash some party theater hosting. Alex ran a hand through his hair. What do we do? There was a pause on the other end. When Annie spoke again, her voice was tight. Stay there. Keep trying. Clark, and I just found Crimson Countess. Found her? Great, once you get her in protective custody, we can. She's dead, Alex. Someone got to her before we did. And based on the blast pattern, Annie's voice cracked slightly. It was Soldier Boy. He's already on the move. Alex felt his stomach drop. Jesus. Okay, I'll keep trying here, but we're on our way. ETA, 20 minutes. The line went dead. Alex looked back at the compound. 20 minutes. He pressed the intercom again. Tommy. Tessa. Please. You have 20 minutes, maybe less. If you won't come with us, at least get out of there. Go anywhere. No response. Alex turned to the agents. How fast can you get through that gate? You're a Supe, aren't you? The younger of the 2 agents said flatly. Just punch it down. I've got like tier 3 strength. My powers are sound-based, and the amount of sonic force I would need to break these things would deafen everyone in like 6 miles. Alex replied, crossing his arms. So can you get in or not? One of them, a grizzled man in his 50s, gave him an even flatter look. Not fast enough if you're asking what I think you're asking. Then we wait. Alex's eyes were fixed on the compound, and we hope to hell Clark gets here in time. Crimson Countess's trailer park, upstate New York, 30 minutes earlier. Clark landed softly in the gravel parking lot, the impact barely making a sound despite his size. The trailer park was exactly as depressing as he'd imagined, a collection of rusted metal boxes housing people who'd been forgotten by the world. Annie touched down beside him a moment later, her light powers dimming as she settled. She's in that one, Clark said, pointing to a faded blue trailer at the far end. But Annie, I don't hear a heartbeat. Shit. Annie's face fell. Are you sure? I'm sure. Clark started walking toward the trailer, his X-ray vision piercing the thin metal walls. What he saw made him stop at his tracks. Annie, you should probably stay. No. Her voice was firm. If she's dead, I need to see. I need to know what we're up against. Clark nodded slowly. He understood. This wasn't about protecting her from the sight of death. Annie had seen plenty. This was about respecting her choice to face what was coming. The trailer door hung open, creaking in the slight breeze. Clark stepped inside first, and the smell hit him immediately. Burned flesh, melted plastic. The acrid stench of ozone came with massive energy discharge. Crimson Countess, Margaret Sullivan, according to the files, lay in the center of what had been her living room, or what was left of her. The body was barely recognizable, charred beyond recognition. The walls around her showed blast patterns, scorch marks radiating outward from where she'd been standing. Oh God, Annie whispered from behind him. Clark, don't come in here, Clark said quietly. There's nothing you need to see. But Annie had already stepped inside. Her face went pale, but she didn't look away. Instead, she moved closer, studying the blast patterns with the careful eye of someone trained to analyze superhuman combat. That's not heat vision, she said after a moment. The pattern's wrong. It's like a wave, like something radiated out from a central point. Soldier boy, Clark confirmed. He'd been studying the same patterns. This is the same energy signature I felt when he hit me in Hell's Kitchen. It's not a beam, it's a pulse, an explosion of radiation from his chest. How powerful is this guy? Annie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Strong enough to kill 3 super dupers without even trying. Strong enough to strip Diana and Kimiko of their powers. Strong enough to knock me down. And, based on what I'm seeing here, he gestured to the destruction around them. Strong enough that I'm not sure I can stop him. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. The admission hung in the air between them like a physical weight. Annie turned to look at him. Then we get Diana back into fighting shape. We get Maeve. We hit him with everything we've got. And if that's not enough, then we figure something else out. Annie's jaw set in determination. Because we can't let him kill anyone else. Butcher's going to aim him at Homelander, Clark replied, remembering what they had learned from about Butcher's recent plan to kill Homelander. Yeah, the man's a monster, but we still need to stop Soldier Boy, Annie grunted, not liking that doing the right thing was protecting the monster. Why? The question came out before Clark could stop it. I mean, if they kill each other, because collateral damage, Clark, you've seen what they can do. If those two go at it for real, how many people die in the crossfire? Annie shook her head. We can't let that happen. Not in a populated area. Not anywhere. Clark knew she was right. But part of him, a dark, tired part that had been growing since his mother's death, wanted to let them fight. Wanted to watch Homelander finally get what he deserved. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out and saw a message from Huey. We need to talk. It's bad. I went with Butcher only to talk him out of it, and it's not working. Please call, it's really bad. Something wrong? Annie asked. Huey says he needs to talk. Clark frowned. We need to check on Alex. If Soldier Boys already hit Crimson Countess, the TNT twins could be next. They were in the air a moment later, the trailer park falling away beneath them. Clark tried Huey's number as they flew, but it went straight to voicemail. Then he tried again. Same result. This isn't good, Annie said, keeping pace beside him. Huey always answers. Always. I know. Clark pushed himself faster. Annie, whatever happens at that compound, we need to be ready for... He stopped mid-sentence. His super hearing had just picked up something. A familiar sonic signature, accompanied by a heartbeat he'd memorized years ago. But there was another heartbeat too, one he'd never expected to hear again. Clark. Annie noticed his hesitation. What is it? Kutta. The name came out barely above a whisper. She's coming. And she's not alone. Annie's eyes widened. Is it Homelander? No, it's... Clark's enhanced vision caught them in the distance. 2 figures are flying toward the compound from the east. One in white and red and blue. The other was in a makeshift costume that was clearly just modified civilian clothes. It's Ryan. Ryan? How what? I don't know. But they're heading straight for the TNT twins compound. And Annie. Clark's voice was grim. Get ready for a fight. They pushed harder, racing toward the compound. But even at full speed, Clark knew they wouldn't arrive before Kara and Ryan. He could only hope that whatever decision Kara had made, it was the right one. Somewhere over Pennsylvania, same time, Ryan clung to Kara's hand as they soared through the air. The wind whipped at his makeshift cape, just a red blanket Kara had found and tied around his shoulders, and he had to squint against the rushing air. He thought the cape was stupid, but Kara had said it was traditional. Apparently Krypton had been big on capes. Despite the discomfort, despite feeling stupid, despite the fear and confusion of the past few days, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, are you certain about this? Kara asked for the 3rd time. Her voice carried easily over the wind, though she kept her eyes fixed forward. Once we do this, there's no going back. My uncle will see it as betrayal. He will not forgive easily. I'm sure, Ryan said, his own voice steadier than he felt. Clark needs us. My MO. Lois needs us. Mia needs us. And you said it yourself. Zod's plan means leaving Earth to burn. We can't do that. Kara's grip on his hand tightened slightly. You're very brave, Connell. You make your ancestors proud. I'm just Ryan, he corrected gently. I know you mean well with the whole Connell thing, but I'm Ryan. Ryan Butcher. Kara looked at him then, and Ryan saw something complicated in her blue eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. You were right. I apologize. I've been so focused on our people, on our mission, that I forgot. You had a life before I arrived. Parents who loved you. A world you belong to. You belong here, too, Ryan said. If you want to. Doi. Kara looked away again. I'm a stranger to this world, Ryan. A soldier from a dead civilization, following orders from a man who may be lost to his grief and anger. I'm not sure I know how to be anything else. Clark could teach you. He's good at that stuff. A small smile crossed Kara's face. Yes. I see much of my Uncle Jor-El in him. That same certainty about what is right. That same refusal to compromise his principles, even when it would be easier. The smile faded. I only hope he can forgive me for my part in what has happened. Ryan wanted to tell her everything would be okay. That Clark would understand, would welcome her with open arms. But he'd seen Clark's face when Martha died. Had heard the rage in his voice during the fight with Homelander. Clark could be forgiving, but there were lines even he wouldn't cross. He'll listen, Ryan said instead. That's what he does. He listens, and he tries to understand. Just be honest with him. Tell him the truth about everything. Everything. Kara's voice was suddenly very small. Even the parts that will hurt him. Especially those parts. Clark's strong enough to handle it. They flew in silence for a moment. Below them, Pennsylvania's hills and forests rolled past in a green blur. Ryan could see the compound now, a white speck on the horizon that was rapidly growing larger. I made a choice, Kara said suddenly, when my uncle gave me time to think about the mission, to think about what we were being asked to do. And so what did you choose? To be more than just a soldier. Kara's voice was stronger now, more certain. My uncle raised me to follow orders, to put Krypton first always, to see everything through the lens of duty and service. And for a long time, I thought that was enough. That being a good soldier was the same as being a good person. But watching Kal-El, seeing how he chooses to use his power, it made me question everything I thought I knew. Kara looked down at Ryan. He could rule this world, could force humanity to bend to his will. He is strong enough, smart enough, determined enough. But he chooses not to. He chooses to serve instead of command, to ask instead of demand. That is not a weakness, as my uncle believes. That is a strength I never knew existed. Ryan felt his throat tighten. So if you're staying, you're going to help us. I'm going to try. Kara's grip on his hand was firm now, steady. I'm going to try to be the hero my cousin is. To live up to the ideals of the House of El, not through blind commitment, but through service and sacrifice. I do not know if I can succeed. I do not know if I'm strong enough. But I must try. Then you'll fit right in, Ryan said, and meant it. They were close to the compound now. Ryan could see the walls, the gate, and the security cameras. And near the entrance, he spotted a familiar figure in blue and silver. That's Alex, Ryan said, pointing. Supersonic. He's one of the good guys. Then we should introduce ourselves properly. Kara began their descent, bringing them down slowly so as not to startle anyone, and hoped that Kal-El arrives before things become complicated. What do you mean? Kara didn't answer, but Ryan followed her gaze to the compound's interior, where his enhanced hearing was just picking up sounds. Music, laughter, and something else. Kara, what is that? Ryan whispered. Hirogasm, karareplied grimly. An annual gathering where Supes indulge in excess. My uncle mentioned it once. Said it was proof of human moral decay spreading to those with power. She looked at Ryan. We should wait for Kal-El. But even as she said it, Ryan's ears picked up new sounds. Screaming. Not the playful kind. Real terror. And underneath it all, a voice saying words that made Ryan's blood run cold. Where are the twins? TNT Twins compound, main house, same time. Tommy and Tessa had just finished their 4th round of shots when the music died. One moment, the party was in full swing. 30 Supes in various states of undress, engaging in activities that would make a pornographer blush. The annual Harrigasm had been their tradition for decades, a chance to let loose without judgment, without cameras, without the world watching. Just power and pleasure and the kind of excess that came from knowing you were basically untouchable. Then the music stopped, and everyone went very, very quiet. What the hell? Tommy slurred, looking around. Who touched the stereo? The front door exploded inward. Later, those who survived would describe what happened in fragments. Disjointed images that didn't quite fit together into a coherent whole. A man in military green uniform carrying an eagle shield walking through the debris. eyes that had seen too much, hands that trembled not with fear, but with barely controlled rage. Where are the twins? The voice was rough, damaged, like someone who'd spent decades screaming and had worn their throat raw. Dude, Deep said from where he'd been engaged with two speedsters whose names no one remembered. You can't just barge in here. This is a private. He never finished the sentence. The man's fist took him in the jaw, and the Deep, Vought's third most powerful hero, who could survive the crushing pressure of the ocean's deepest trenches, went down like he'd been hit by a freight train. That's when the panic started. Supes scattered in every direction. Some flew, some ran, some just froze, their drug and alcohol-addled minds unable to process what was happening. A few tried to fight back, sending blasts of energy or swinging enhanced fists at the intruder. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. The man walked through them like they were children. A telekinetics attempted restraint was shattered. A fire manipulator's flames washed over him harmlessly. A brick shithouse of a strong man tried to tackle him and ended up with a broken spine for his trouble. Where are the twins? The roar came from everywhere and nowhere. And for the first time in their lives, every Supe in that room felt what it was like to be truly powerless. Tommy saw him first, recognized him from old photos, old stories, old nightmares he'd thought were safely buried. No, he whispered. You're dead. You're supposed to be dead. Soldier Boy's eyes locked onto him. Surprise. Tommy didn't run. Couldn't run. Fear had turned his legs to jelly. Tessa grabbed his hand, their powers activating in tandem. Their trademark twin detonation that had leveled buildings and killed hundreds. Soldier Boy's chest began to glow. Wait, Tommy started. The explosion came from both sides at once. The TNT twins unleashed everything they had, a blast of concussive force that should have vaporized anything in its path. Soldier Boy's chest erupted with that sickly green radiation, a pulse of energy that made reality itself seem to bend. The two forces met in the middle with a sound like the world ending. Outside the compound, same moment, Clark heard the explosion from 3 miles out. Felt it too, a percussive wave that rippled through the air and set his teeth on edge. He pushed himself faster, breaking the sound barrier and not caring about the boom that rattled windows for miles around. Clark! Annie's voice crackled through his comm. She was falling behind, couldn't match his speed. What's happening? I don't know. He reached the compound's airspace and immediately spotted Alex crouched behind a van, hands over his ears. Ryan and Kara were hovering above the main gate. Kara's arms spread as if to shield Ryan from something. Then he saw the house, or rather, where the house had been. The entire structure had been reduced to rubble, smoke and dust rising in a column that had to be visible from orbit. Bodies, some moving, most not, littered the grounds. Supes in torn costumes stumbled away from the wreckage, bleeding and dazed. And in the center of it all, standing in a crater where the living room used to be, was Soldier Boy. The man looked worse than when Clark had last seen him. His skin had a grayish tinge, and there were dark veins visible beneath the surface. His chest still glowed faintly, that radiation pulsing in time with his heartbeat. But his eyes, those are what caught Clark's attention. They were empty, hollow, the eyes of a man who had nothing left to lose. At Soldier Boy's feet lay what was left of the TNT twins. They'd been at the epicenter of the blast, and the two forces, their detonation and his radiation, had torn them apart at a molecular level. There was nothing left to save. Ben! Another voice shouted from the rubble. Clark's X-ray vision picked out Butcher, stumbling towards Soldier Boy, Huey right behind him. Both were glowing with that familiar green tinge of Temp V. Ben, it's done. They're dead. We need to go before. Before what? Soldier Boy's voice was rough. He didn't even turn to look at Butcher. Before more of them show up, let them come. I'll kill them all. That wasn't the deal, Butcher said, stopping a few yards away. We find payback. You get your revenge. Then we go after Homelander. That was the plan, mate. Fuck the plan. Soldier Boy finally turned. You know what I've realized? They're all the same. All of you. Vought, Payback, the Seven, these degenerates hosting my party. You're all just animals pretending to be gods. And I'm done pretending I'm not better than you. Clark landed between them and Soldier Boy. The impact cratered the ground, but he didn't care. He could feel the radiation emanating from Soldier Boy like heat from a furnace, could taste the wrongness of it in the air. It ends now, Clark said quietly. Soldier Boy looked at him, really looked at him, and something flickered in those empty eyes. Recognition. Understanding. You. Me, Clark confirmed. You killed Crimson Countess. The TNT twins. How many more, Ben? How many more before you've had enough? I don't know. Soldier Boy's voice was honest, which somehow made it worse. As many as it takes. Takes for what? They can't bring back the years you lost. Can't undo what was done to you. Clark took a careful step forward. I know what Payback did. I know they betrayed you. But this, killing everyone connected to your past, it won't fix anything. It'll make me feel better. Will it? Clark gestured to the carnage around them. Do you feel better now? Standing in a pile of corpses. For a moment, just a moment, something human flickered across Soldier Boy's face. Doubt, maybe even regret. But then it was gone, buried beneath decades of pain and rage. Get out of my way, kid. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment you killed someone, when you murdered those super dupers, when you hurt Diana and Kimiko, when you made everyone afraid. Clark's eyes hardened. I am giving you a chance. Surrender. You'll face punishment for your crimes, but we will get you help. Then we're going to have a problem. Soldier Boy's chest began to glow again. Because I'm not done. And you can't stop me. No, a new voice said from above. But we can. Kara descended like an avenging angel, Ryan carefully held in one arm. She set him down gently behind Clark before stepping forward to stand beside her cousin. Soldier Boy, she said formally. I am Kara Zor-El of the House of El. You have committed murder. You have threatened innocent lives and taken others. I order you to stand down and face judgment. Soldier Boy looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was an ugly sound. Another one? How many of you freaks did they make? I'm not made, Kara replied coldly. I am Kryptonian, as is my cousin, and together we will stop you. Kara, Clark said quietly, I thought you were with Zod. I was, but I made a choice, Kal-El. The same choice you made years ago. She looked at him, and Clark saw nothing but sincerity in her eyes. To stand with Earth. To protect its people, not abandon them. My uncle can leave if he wishes, but I will not. Not while you need me. Something tight in Clark's chest loosened. Just a little. We'll talk about this later. Right now, Soldier Boy's chest flashed. Enough talking. The pulse erupted outward. Clark and Kara both crossed their arms, bracing against the wave of radiation. It washed over them like acid, burning and clawing and trying to unmake them at a cellular level. Clark gritted his teeth against the pain, felt his knees start to buckle. Then Kara grabbed his hand. Instantly, the pain lessened. Not gone, but manageable. Their shared Kryptonian physiology somehow was helping them resist together better than apart. Clark squeezed her hand and stood straight again. Together, he asked. Together, Kara confirmed. They moved as one. Clark went low, Kara went high. Both hit Soldier Boy simultaneously, and for the first time since his resurrection, the man actually went down. He crashed into the rubble, carving a trench through the debris. Now, Butcher shouted from somewhere behind them. While he's down, but Soldier Boy was already getting up, and his chest was glowing brighter than before. Oh hell, Huey whispered. The second pulse was stronger, wider. It caught everyone in a 50-foot radius. Clark felt his skin burn, felt his powers flicker. Beside him, Kara screamed, a sound of pure agony that made his heart stop. Behind them, Butcher and Huey both collapsed, the Temp V in their systems unable to protect them from this. Further back, Ryan fell to his knees, clutching his head. The only one left standing was Soldier Boy, and his chest was still glowing. I told you, he said, his voice distorted by the energy building inside him. You can't stop me. None of you can. I'm the only real hero this world ever had. The only one strong enough to do what needs to be done. And what's that? Clark gasped, forcing himself to stand. Kill everyone, if that's what it takes. The energy was building. Clark could see it, could feel it. This next pulse wouldn't just hurt. It would kill everyone in range. Butcher, Huey, Ryan, the surviving Supes who were too weak to run. Maybe even Kara. Maybe even him. He couldn't let that happen. Clark gathered every ounce of strength he had left. Pushed through the pain, through the radiation burns, through the feeling of his powers being stripped away. He launched himself at Soldier Boy, grabbing the man around the waist and driving him backwards. They crashed through the compound wall, through the outer fence, into the field beyond. Clark kept pushing, kept flying, putting as much distance as he could between Soldier Boy and everyone else. The energy in Soldier Boy's chest was reaching critical mass. It was going to explode any second now. Let go. Soldier Boy roared, trying to shake Clark off. No, you'll die, you idiot. Maybe, but everyone else will live. For just a moment, Soldier Boy stopped struggling, stopped fighting, and in his eyes, Clark saw something he hadn't expected. Respect. You really are something, kid, Soldier Boy said quietly. Shame we're on opposite sides. It's not too late to. The explosion cut him off. The radiation erupted from Soldier Boy's chest at point-blank range. Clark felt it tear through him, ripping apart his cells, unmaking him at a fundamental level. The pain was beyond anything he'd ever experienced, beyond description, beyond comprehension. He held on, even as his vision went white, even as he felt himself dying, even as every atom in his body screamed at him to let go, to fly away, to save himself. He held on, because that's what heroes did. That's what the S meant. Hope, even in the face of certain death. The world went white, then black, then nothing at all. Bede wins, kumpun, moments late. Annie finally arrived to find hell. The compound was gone. Just gone. A crater roughly the size of a football field marked where it had been. Bodies were scattered everywhere, some moving, some not. The few Supes who were still conscious were fleeing in every direction, too traumatized to do anything but run. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." Annie, Huey's voice. He was on his knees near where the gate had been, the green glow of Temp V still visible under his skin, but fading fast. "Annie, we need help. We need." A streak of red and blue caught her eye. Clark, carrying Soldier Boy, had flown nearly a mile away before the explosion. But now there was a second crater, a smaller one, and in it, two figures lay unmoving. Annie's heart stopped. No, 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 no. She flew to them faster than she'd ever flown before, landed hard enough to crack her ankles, but didn't care. Dropped to her knees beside Clark's smoking form. "Clark? Clark!" She grabbed his shoulders, trying to shake him awake. "Come on, you don't get to do this. You don't get to die on me." "Clark!" Kara appeared beside her, looking barely better than her cousin. Her costume was scorched, her face pale, but she was moving. She pressed two fingers to Clark's neck, searching for a pulse. "He lives," she said, relief clear in her voice. "But barely. The radiation, it damaged him severely. We need to get him to sunlight. Yellow sun radiation is the only thing that can heal this kind of injury. Then we move him," Annie said immediately. "We get him somewhere sunny and—" No, the voice was weak, pained, but undeniably alive. Not done yet." Annie looked down. Soldier Boy was moving. How was he moving? The explosion should have at least knocked him out. But he was already pushing himself to his feet, skin cracked and bleeding, but somehow still functional. "Oh, come on." Annie breathed. "What does it take to stop you?" "More than you've got, doll." Soldier Boy took a staggering step toward them. "Move aside, girl. This ain't your fight." "Like hell it's not." Annie stepped between him and Clark, her hands beginning to glow. She knew it wouldn't be enough. Knew her power was nothing compared to Soldier Boy's radiation pulse. But she'd die before she let him hurt Clark. "Anya?" "No." Huey shouted from behind. He was running toward them, stumbling, clearly at the end of his Temp V boost. "You can't." A blue and white figure blurred past him. Kara, moving at super speed, intercepted Soldier Boy with a devastating punch to the jaw. The impact sent him flying backwards, tumbling across the scarred earth. "You will not touch them," Kara said, her voice cold. "You will stop this madness, or I will stop you." Soldier Boy laughed. Actually laughed, blood streaming from his mouth. "You? Stop me? Lady, I'm Soldier Boy. Who the fuck are you?" "As I said, I am Kara Zor-El." Kara's eyes began to glow red. "And you will find I am not so easily killed." Soldier Boy's chest began to glow in response. The two of them stared each other down, power building, both preparing to unleash everything they had. This is it, Annie thought. This is where everything ends. Either Kara wins and saves us all, or Soldier Boy wins and kills us all. There's no middle ground. No compromise. Just survival or death. She looked down at Clark's unconscious form, at the rise and fall of his chest that was barely visible. Thought about Huey, about Ryan, about all the people who were counting on them. Thought about the league they tried to build, the dream of something better than Vought's corruption and power. It couldn't end like this. It couldn't. But she had no idea how to stop it. A sonic boom shattered the moment. Everyone's heads snapped up as a new figure descended from the sky, cape billowing, face fixed in a cruel smile. "Well," Homelander said, landing between Kara and Soldier Boy. "Looks like I missed the party." The situation, somehow, had just gotten worse. Sam Lane's safe house, unknown location, 6 hours earlier. Diana Prince didn't knock. She kicked the door in, the reinforced steel bending under the force of her blow, even with her powers gone. The guards inside reached for their weapons, but she was faster, disarming them with brutal efficiency that came from decades of combat training. "Where is he?" she roared. "Stand down," one of the guards shouted, but his voice trembled. Even depowered, Diana Prince was terrifying. "I said, where is he?" "I'm right here." Sam Lane emerged from a back room, completely unruffled by the chaos. He looked at the broken door, the disarmed guards, Diana's furious expression, and simply nodded. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said calmly. "I assume you want what I think you want." "You're goddamn right I do. You fucking sent us there, you owe me." Diana grabbed him by the collar, slamming him against the wall. "I helped release him. Soldier Boy killed 3 of my kids. And now he's out there, walking free, while I'm stuck in this useless meat bag that can't even lift a car." "So you want V?" Lane said. Not a question, a statement. Not just V, pure V. The original formula. The one that gave me my powers in the first place before Vought diluted it and turned it into the shit they sell today. Diana's grip tightened. "And I know you have it. I know you've kept samples from the original trials. I know you've been studying it, trying to figure it out. Lane's one good, I studied her. You know what it'll do to you. Your body's already been exposed. The second dose, there's no predicting the outcome. You could get your powers back. You could die. Or you could turn into something worse than Soldier Boy. I don't care. You should, because even if it works, even if you get your powers back. Lane's voice was soft, almost gentle. I'll have to kill you one day. You understand that, right? You'll be too dangerous. Too powerful. I'm not stopping until they are all gone. You understand, yes? Then you kill me. Diana released him, stepping back. But not until after I kill Soldier Boy. That's the deal. Give me back my powers. Let me end that monster. And then you can do whatever you think is necessary. Lane was quiet for a long moment, studying her with that calculating gaze that had made him one of the most dangerous men in the intelligence community. Finally, he nodded. All right, but we do this my way. Controlled environment. Medical supervision. And if things go wrong, if you start turning into something we can't control, I pull the plug. Literally. Phoenix. Lane gestured to one of the guards. Get Dr. Chun. Tell her to prep the lab. He looked back at Diana. This is going to hurt. A lot. Good, Diana said grimly. I could use the distraction. TNT Twins compound present. Homelander's arrival changed everything and nothing simultaneously. He stood between Kara and Soldier Boy like a referee at a boxing match. That trademark smile plastered on his face, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were taking in every detail. So this is the famous Soldier Boy, Homelander said, turning to look at the older Supe. America's first superhero. I was told stories about you when I was a kid. Said you were the standard. The template for everything that came after. Homelander, Soldier Boy said, and something complex crossed his face. Recognition? Curiosity? What's Golden Boy? The one who replaced me. Replaced you? Oh, no, no, no. Homelander's smile widened. I didn't replace you. I exceeded you. You were the prototype. I'm the finished product. Annie felt Huey come up beside her, both of them instinctively positioning themselves between the Supes and Clark's unconscious form. Ryan had appeared too, looking terrified but determined not to run. We need to get Clark out of here, Annie whispered. Before this turns into... Too late, Huey breathed. Soldier Boy's chest was glowing again. Not bright. He was clearly exhausted from the previous blasts, but still dangerous. You know what? I'm getting really tired of people telling me what I was. What I am. What I'm supposed to be. His eyes locked on Homelander. How about I show you what I can do? Please, Homelander laughed. You're from the 1980s. You probably can't even figure out how to use a smartphone. What makes you think you can? The pulse hit Homelander square in the chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Homelander just stood there, looking down at his chest where the radiation had struck, then back up at Soldier Boy with an expression of genuine confusion. Was that supposed to hurt? He asked. Then his knees buckled. What? Homelander's voice cracked. He clutched at his chest, his face going pale. What did you? I can't, my powers. Yeah, Soldier Boy said darkly. That's what it feels like, having everything taken away. How's it feel, Golden Boy? Homelander's eyes went wide with panic. Real, genuine terror that Annie had never seen on his face before. He tried to fly, but only managed to lift a few inches before crashing back down. Tried to use his heat vision, but nothing came out. No, Homelander whispered. No, this isn't. I'm Homelander. I'm the world's greatest superhero. You can't. I just did. Soldier Boy started walking toward him. And now I'm going to do what should have been done years ago. Annie saw it happening. Saw Soldier Boy raising his fist. Saw Homelander too weak to defend himself. Saw a killing blow about to land. And despite everything, despite knowing what Homelander was, what he'd done, the people he'd hurt, she couldn't let it happen. Not like this. Not as an execution. Her hands lit up. Soldier Boy, stop. The blast of light caught him in the side, sending him stumbling. It wasn't strong enough to hurt him, but it broke his focus. He turned to look at her, and the expression on his face was one of pure disbelief. You're defending him? I'm not defending him, Annie said, her voice shaking but steady. I'm stopping you from murdering someone. There's a difference. I've already killed plenty today, sweetheart. One more won't make a difference. Yes, it will, Kara said, stepping forward. Her eyes were still glowing red, but her voice was calm. Controlled. This is execution, not justice. The hell do you know about justice? Soldier Boy spat. You're one of them. One of these freaks pretending to be heroes while the world burns. You are right, Kara said, and the admission seemed to surprise everyone, including Soldier Boy. I did not know much about justice. I was raised as a soldier, trained to follow orders, to see the world in terms of missions and objectives. She took another step forward. But my cousin taught me something. That power without restraint is not strength. It is tyranny. Save the speech, Soldier Boy growled. I'm ending this. One way or another. He turned back to Homelander, chest beginning to glow again. But before he could take another step, Butcher was there, Temp V, still coursing through his system, putting himself between Soldier Boy and his target. "Ben," Butcher said quietly, "we had a deal, mate. We take down Payback. Then we go after Homelander. Together. Not like this. Get out of my way, William." "Can't do that." Butcher's jaw was set, his eyes going to Ryan softening. "You want him dead? Fine. So do I. But not like this. Not in front of the boy." For a long moment, Soldier Boy stared at Butcher. Then he laughed, that same ugly, bitter sound. "You're a real piece of work, you know that? You hate him more than anyone. Spent years trying to kill him. And now you're protecting him?" "I'm not," Butcher said, his eyes flashing with rage as he looked at Clark and Ryan. "I'm protecting those that don't deserve to get caught up in our shit." Something flickered in Soldier Boy's eyes. Something almost human. But then it was gone, buried beneath decades of pain and rage and betrayal. "Move," he said coldly, "or I go through you." Butcher didn't move. Soldier Boy's chest flared. The pulse was building, faster this time. Stronger. He was going to release it at point-blank range. Kill Butcher and Homelander both. "No." Huey screamed. The pulse erupted, but never hit Butcher. Kara moved faster than anyone could track. One moment she was 10 feet away. The next she was behind Soldier Boy, her fist driven completely through his chest. The world seemed to freeze. Annie's hands flew to her mouth. Huey stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock. Ryan made a sound like a wounded animal. Even Butcher looked stunned, staring at the bloody fist protruding from Soldier Boy's sternum. "What?" Soldier Boy's voice was barely a whisper. He looked down at the hole in his chest, at the Kryptonian fist that had punched clean through his body. "What did you?" Kara withdrew her hand slowly. Soldier Boy collapsed to his knees, blood pooling beneath him. She stood over him, her face completely calm, composed, as if she'd just completed a routine training exercise. "It had to be done," she said simply. "He would not stop, would not listen, and more people would have died. Kara." And he couldn't find the words. You killed him. I ended a threat." Kara looked at her, and there was no emotion in those blue eyes. Just cold calculation. That is what soldiers do, what I was trained to do. Eliminate threats to the mission. Protect the objective. Save lives. She glanced down at Soldier Boy's body. "He gave me no choice. There's always a choice." The shout came from behind them. Clark, somehow, impossibly, was on his feet. He looked like death warmed over, skin pale, costume charred, moving like every step caused him agony. But his eyes were blazing with fury. "You didn't have to kill him." "Kal-El," Kara started. "Don't." Clark's voice was sharp enough to cut. "Don't you dare try to justify this to me." You punched through his chest, through his heart. That wasn't stopping a threat. That was an execution. He was about to kill William Butcher, Kara said, her calm starting to crack. "Was I supposed to let that happen? You could have disarmed him, knocked him out, restrained him." Clark was advancing on her now, and Annie had never seen him this angry. Not even when Homelander killed his mother. There were a dozen other options, Kara. A dozen ways to stop him without killing him. He was too dangerous to be kept alive. Kara's voice was defensive now. "You saw what he could do. The radiation. The destruction. How many more would have died if I had hesitated? So you get to decide?" Clark demanded. "You get to be judge, jury, and executioner? That's not heroism, Kara. That's not what the House of L stands for. Don't you dare. You know fragments of history, culture of our house. What I did is acceptable under all our laws and traditions, including our own houses." Kara's composure was finally shattered. "What would you have had me do, cousin? Let him kill Butcher? Let him kill Homelander? Let him keep destroying until someone else died stopping him? I made the hard choice. The cry-option choice. The choice you were too weak to make." The words hung in the air like poison. Clark stared at her. "Get away from me. Kal-El, I have chosen you over Zoe. I said get away from me." The roar was loud enough to rattle what was left of the compound walls. "You want to be a soldier? Fine. Go back to Zod. Go back to following orders and killing whoever you're told to kill. But don't stand there and pretend you're a hero. Don't you dare wear that symbol and call yourself family." Kara looked like she'd been slapped. I was trying to help. I thought. You thought wrong." Clark's voice was ice. "A real hero finds another way. Always. Even when it's hard. Even when it seems impossible. That's what makes us different from them." He gestured to Soldier Boy's body. "That's what makes us better. Better." Kara's voice went deadly quiet as her eyes narrowed at him. "Or just weaker? If mercy is weakness, then I'll take weakness over strength any day." Kara opened her mouth, closed it, looked down at her blood-covered hand, at Soldier Boy's body, at the faces staring at her, Annie's shock, Huey's horror, Ryan's fear, Butcher's unreadable expression. She took a step towards Ryan, who recoiled away from her. She swallowed hard. "I should go." "Yeah," Clark said quietly. "You should." Kara lifted off slowly, hovered for a moment, as if waiting for Clark to call her back, to say something, anything. He didn't. She flew away, a white streak against the darkening sky. Within seconds, she was gone. Annie moved to Clark's side, steadying him as his legs started to give out. "Clark, you need a rest. You're still hurt." "I'm fine," he said, but his voice was hollow. He looked at Soldier Boy's body. Is he really dead?" Butcher knelt beside Soldier Boy, checking for a pulse. After a moment, he shook his head. "Yeah, he's gone." Kara put her fist straight through his ticker. "Nothing survives that." "Good." Homelander's voice rasped from behind them. He was on his feet now, powers slowly returning. "Good riddance to bad rubbish. That psycho nearly killed me." "Shut up," Annie snapped. "Just shut up." Homelander looked at her, then at Clark, then at the devastation around them. For once, he seemed to read the room. He took off without another word, flying unsteadily toward the horizon. "We need to secure the area," Huey said, his voice shaky. "Call in the bureau. Get medical teams for the survivors. And we need to deal with the body." "I'll handle it," Butcher said. He was still kneeling beside Soldier Boy, and there was something complicated in his expression. He was a right bastard. Killed dozens. Maybe more. But he didn't deserve to go out like that. Not executed. Not from behind. "No one deserves that," Clark said softly. He looked at Annie. "I need to sit down. Before I fall down." She helped him to a relatively intact section of wall. Ryan appeared with a bottle of water from somewhere, and Clark drank gratefully. Around them, Bureau agents were finally arriving, along with medical personnel and cleanup crews. "What happens now?" Ryan asked quietly. "With Kara?" "I don't know," Clark admitted. He looked exhausted, defeated. I thought she'd changed. Thought she'd chosen Earth over Zod. But she's still a soldier, still following that Kryptonian training. She saved Butcher's life," Annie pointed out gently. "Soldier Boy was going to kill him. She executed a man from behind." Clark's voice was flat. "There's no justifying that. She crossed a line. A line you've never crossed," Annie said. "Because you're you. But Kara, she's not you, Clark. She wasn't raised by Martha and Jonathan. Wasn't taught those same values. She's trying, but she's what she is." Clark closed his eyes. "And now Soldier Boy is dead. And I have to live with the fact that I couldn't save him. Couldn't find a way to stop him without it ending like this." "This isn't on you," Huey said firmly. "Soldier Boy made his choices. So did Kara. You did everything you could." "Did I?" Clark looked at them. "Because it doesn't feel like it." Before anyone could respond, Butcher let out a sharp curse. "Bloody hell. Clark! Clark!" They all turned. Butcher was backing away from Soldier Boy's body, his face pale. "What?" Clark struggled to his feet. "What is it?" He's fucking moving." Annie felt her blood run cold. That was impossible. No one survived having their heart destroyed. Not even Supe's. It was physically impossible. But Soldier Boy's fingers were twitching. His chest, the gaping hole where Kara's fist had punched through, was beginning to close. Not healing normally. Not regenerating like a typical Supe. The wound was filling in with something. Something white and hard and bone-like. "Oh God," Huey whispered. "What is that?" Soldier Boy's eyes snapped open. He sucked in a gasping, rattling breath, then slowly, impossibly, pushed himself to his feet. The hole in his chest was completely sealed now, covered over with what looked like exposed bone. Smooth, white, glistening in the fading sunlight. He touched the healed wound, fingers running over the bone-like surface. Then he looked up at all of them, and the expression on his face was beyond anything human. Beyond rage, beyond pain, beyond sanity. "Guess I'm harder to kill than she thought," he said, his voice wrong somehow. Distorted, as if it was coming from somewhere deep inside him. Somewhere dark and terrible and best left alone. His chest began to glow, brighter than before. Hotter, the bone-like patch pulsing with that sickly green radiation. Annie grabbed Huey. Clark grabbed Ryan. Butcher just stood there, frozen, staring at the monster they created. "Oh," Soldier Boy said, that terrible smile spreading across his face. "Now things get interesting." And as the sun set over the ruins of the TNT Twins compound, as the survivors scattered and the heroes prepared for what came next, one thing became absolutely, terrifyingly clear. It was only the beginning.